World at War to Vanguard. Does he include Terramala? I'm very interested to hear what he puts at the bottom here. But let's go, chat.
The best
Two
zombies
times
map
speed.
of
What
all
am I,
time.
Noah J?
Kino Der Toten,
I ain't
Black
that
Ops
bad.
1.
Let's go. Let's start
What's going
up.
on, guys? So
up.
Call of Duty Zombies, a game franchise that has been out for over a decade now, has had a large number of zombies maps and iterations.
Chat, COD Zombies is 14 years old now, I think. It came out in 2008. It's 2022. 14 years old, dude. Wow.
Over the years, and this game has been in my life ever since its release, and I've played each and every zombies map very extensively. And today we're going to be ranking every zombies map from worst to best. That being said, this is Treyarch only, and it feels appropriate to do a ranking of all maps right now because we're going to be getting a new Treyarch game or any major zombies content until 2020. We're at like a moment to pause and really take a look at the past decade of zombies and rank every map. For the most part, these are going to be ranked on the basis of their gameplay design, and I'm going to try to remove like any sort of nostalgia or other bias as much as that's physically possible.
I like that. Okay.
But this is going to be every Treyarch zombies map ranked from worst to best. And if you want to tell me how bad my zombies opinions are, you can tell me on my Twitch channel. I'll probably just stream it over there. But anyways, drop a like if you guys enjoy, subscribe if you're brand new. And with that being said, this is going to be quite a long video. So seriously, sit back, relax, enjoy, grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's get into it. Coming in at the absolute bottom of the barrel should be really no surprise to anybody. Honestly, I don't really want to talk about it for too long, but I'm just going to classify Duranfong and Terramaldecta, which is the new Vanguard map, technically into one category because
you know what? I actually like that because we were just talking about that. How do you represent Terramaldecta or Duranfong? Put them in the same category. So much better. I mean, that's fire. And then that encompasses everything that happens with Vanguard. So the fucking Shi No Numa that you're watching. Boys, we're watching the new Shi No Numa gameplay, boys.
They are the same thing. And Vanguard Zombies doesn't work for most people for a variety of reasons, but one of the main ones being that the entire loop of the core Zombies gameplay doesn't even exist here. And not only that, but the game's name is fundamentally tarnished because it launched in what you couldn't even call an alpha build. No round-based maps, no pack-punch camo, no wonder weapon on launch. It was absolutely down horrendous, and it's probably the lowest point for Zombies we've ever seen. That being said, they are doing a lot to update the game for sure, and they're putting some effort into it. But at this point, in a lot of ways, I just think it's too late, and there isn't much they can do to like
revive it. If you're playing Vanguard, go play something else, man. There's so much better shit worth your time, man. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. As even a bit, like, listen, I know I only play COD most of the time, but dude, there's so much better than shit than Vanguard. I promise you. I promise you, dude. I'll do anything for you guys to get off the damn game.
Realize the game in any real sense, but I had to put on the list somewhere. It's got to be at the bottom. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. But coming up next on our list is kind of surprising, but I'm actually going to give this to Transit. And some of you might be saying like, "Wow, Transit is really that bad? It's that close to Vanguard Zombies?" Not exactly.
Agree or disagree here?
Exactly. I still think Transit is light years ahead of Vanguard and where that's at. But
I mean, I agree
with Transit, and more specifically, a lot of the maps on this list, fun does not necessarily equal a good map. I've had some of my most fun Zombies experiences on Transit. That being said, you can fundamentally see where the map isn't actually designed all that well. But that's okay. What you're going to notice, and probably your personal Zombies experience might reflect this too, is that fun...
So is this only Treyarch? Okay, it looks like it's only Treyarch. So, I mean, if it is Treyarch, I guess Transit does make sense. But chat, honestly, I'd probably put Voyage down here, to be honest.
More specifically, a lot of the maps on this list, fun does not necessarily equal a good map. I've had some of my most fun Zombies experiences on Transit. That being said, where the map isn't actually designed all that well.
But again, hearts in the chat for my man
What you're going to
Jack.
notice, and probably your personal Zombies experience might reflect this too, is that fun does not necessarily always correlate to good. And in this case, Transit exemplifies no better. This is one of the most fun Zombies experiences you can have, I think, especially in co-op. Solo, maybe not so much, but in co-op, it can be one of the most chaotic experiences.
Rabbit needs money for hair. He's not getting hair.
But it's pretty obvious that the Transit we have today was clearly not the original intention or design that Jimmy Zielinski and the studio had in mind when making the map. You might call this like a light version of probably what they envisioned that was severely held back by hardware limitations at the time. But that being said, Transit is still absolutely iconic.
We'll figure it out at the end of this
for
video,
that very fact. And as I was saying earlier, fun doesn't always necessarily correlate to good. A lot of times that is the case, but this is one of the most pure situations in which the opposite can take place. Very bad design, but incredible fun sometimes. All right, next up for me is going to be Nacht Der Toten. So why exactly?
Wow, really? Wow, chat, what do you guys think about this? I definitely don't agree with this, but I'm a Call of Dead bias lover.
Wow. Am I ranking this so low? Let me just get one thing right off.
Below Voyage?
The bat. I think this map visually is one of the best looking zombies maps of all time. Aesthetically, it's got one of the best color palettes, and honestly, I'll never get...
I actually agree. The red and blue contrast in TOG is pretty cool.
Tired of looking at it, but a lot of the gameplay design and the structure of the map itself felt...
Chat, is TOG worse than Voyage, though? I just can't agree with that. Dude, Voyage is just... Ugh, you know,
so odd and clunky, and I didn't understand why for a lot of the time. And I've talked about this before, and some of you may know, some of you may not, but to my knowledge, most of the map and a lot of its design wasn't even made by Treyarch. It was made by Activision Shanghai.
Okay, that's a fair
and this
point.
Could explain a lot of the clunkiness in the map layout, the really strange...
But I mean, it's still better than Voyage, though, bro. It's still better than Voyage,
design.
Man.
There's a lot about Nacht Der Toten that just feels really foreign, and I mean, there's a lot to do in the map. Don't get me wrong. Like, you can go... There's a ton of things to do and go gather. It's a very fetch quest heavy map, and this is a lot of my problem with Black Ops 4 in general, is that a lot of the maps, sure, they have really great like puzzle design, and there's a lot to do in them, but it's like the zombies themselves are like a side factor. They don't even really
best zombies.
That's so true, though. Thank you, fun.
So it ends up feeling very disconnected.
I would have to say, though, that TOG is more playable than a lot of BO4 maps, to be honest. It's really not that big of a hurdle to get in, so I don't know about this one.
Entire situation with the facility kind of being thrown in there that is utterly pointless unless you're doing the Easter egg. It's a really clear indicator to me that this map wasn't as fine-tuned as it probably could have been, and this was...
But, I mean, you could also argue that TOG and Alpha Omega shouldn't exist because there should have been a Great War map and Chaos maps and all that. So, I mean, it's fair,
Also
man.
supposed
but
to
I agree, TOG gets a lot of hate.
For a Black Ops 4 Season 2 before they had to move it up in the schedule because of everything that happened with BO4 Zombies. Nacht Der Toten could have been an amazing map, but I think was just butchered in its execution. So next up we have Die Rise, which again really exemplifies...
Wow! Dude, my man's Voyage is not next. I'm gonna be shocked. Okay, Die Rise is fair.
The entire idea that a map can be tremendously fun, but
map
still not really that good of a map at all. Die Rise has it's basically the amalgamation of Jimmy Zielinski's chaotic brain, where Jason Blundell is order, Jimmy Zielinski is pure chaos.
Yeah, that's so true.
Absolutely manifest in Die Rise. This is one of the things that makes Black Ops 2 beautiful in my opinion.
Die Rise is not better than TOG.
While Jason Blundell maps are amazing and they have like really good core gameplay and structure, which we'll talk about more. But Jimmy Zielinski maps have just this utter chaos to them that there really is no one best way to go about them. Think of like Transit, Die Rise, and Buried. They're very unstructured by nature. You can build a trample steam on Die Rise if you want to. You don't have to. You can build a sliquifier, not necessary. There's a million ways to approach and play the map, which is interesting. But what you lose in that process is like sometimes really good core gameplay that they want you to experience. But Jimmy Zielinski maps are more just like, yo, here's a really big sandbox of just random things that you can use at your
but that's why I think they're more
fun. The game does not outright tell you how to get from point A to point B.
Also, chat, the amount of little tips and tricks on the Jimmy Zielinski Black Ops 2 maps are what I think makes them so cool a lot of the times. But yeah, it's not suited for everyone.
When you're navigating
100%.
Across the rooftops of buildings and in between them, the game's just like, yo, here's a bunch of tools, go figure it out. Which that sort of like non-structure is charming to an extent. Yeah. And I really think we've lost a lot of that in recent Zombies. And again, it's one of the things that makes Black Ops 2 so beautiful is having the juxtaposition of these kinds of like random and chaotic maps with like
my boy Johnny J
maps. From what I know as well, there's at least supposed to be some degree of a survival map for Die Rise. Similarly to how Town exists in relation to Transit, there would have been like an on-the-ground streets version of Die Rise that you could have played as like a small survival experience.
Chat, one in the chat if you would have liked that. I mean, dude, I wish Die Rise had a survival. I think that would have made it more fun, man. It would have made the DLC more worth it too. That would have been sick.
Will likely never ever see the light of day, but we have Die Rise as it is, fundamentally flawed and, you know, very strange execution as a map, but right now it's revered as one of the classics, although it was definitely hated on its release. And another thing you'll notice, especially in modern day zombies maps, is there's very little wasted space, where that is not at all the case in Die Rise. There are some areas and some playable spaces.
Like, when do you ever use like the bottom area of this place, for example? Like, nobody
serve
ever
zero purpose, like at all. There's not cart locations to spawn there. There's really no ways to set up good strategies there. They just exist. It's like if you want to play here, you can, but otherwise, this area serves zero function. It's very strange. But
Chad, here's the question: would Die Rise have been better, or Modern Warfare 2 High Rise as a zombies map, dude? Modern Warfare 2 High Rise, I think, would have been such a sick zombies map, dude. Bro, I wish they would have done some shit.
And it's one of those really, like, charming, interesting, weird parts of Die Rise. So next up is Dead of the Night, and
wow, dude, I'm shocked. Dude, where is Voyage? Really?
Gone on public record multiple times saying that I'm not really a massive fan of this map. And honestly, if I'm not playing Dead of the Night...
chat, Dead of the Night or Voyage? Dude, Dead of the Night, I think, is just so, like, leagues better than Voyage.
At 3 a.m., I don't know. So
I know.
My whole thing with Dead of the Night, and the reason I don't particularly like this map, is not because the fetch quests themselves are bad or the puzzles or anything like that. And on paper, I actually quite like a lot of these puzzles, but the problem is they don't belong in a zombies map. And I feel like in a lot of ways, Dead of the Night isn't even a zombies map. Like, there's so many parts together, there's so many fetch quests you can do.
Listen, chat, I always say this, I think it's just a learning curve. That's all I think it is. It's just a learning curve that it's not on any other map or any other experience, that once you get and understand it, it is better. Voyage's learning curve is not a fun learning curve, whereas I feel like Dead of the Night's learning curve is fun. It's like you're doing like a clue map where you're like trying to figure out the clues and puzzles. Like, it is cool. It's a different experience for sure.
You can stay busy for over an hour gathering and making things in Dead of the Night.
Very true.
Whereas in a lot of cases, you'll know what I'm saying, the zombies themselves kind of feel like an afterthought. This map got so far ahead of itself in terms of having puzzles to solve and things to do and parts to gather that it almost forgot to be a zombies map. And I think, like, besides all of the issues with, like, Nosferatu and some of
I agree or disagree with Chop here. I mean, I think I definitely disagree, just because, I mean, Voyage is just still just such a shit map, but...
Other, like, boss enemies.
Is Jack gone? Chat. I think Jack's gone. Let's fucking go, bro. Everyone be quiet. He might be sleeping, bro. Everybody chill out, bro. Monka W, where is he, dude?
Easter egg, in theory, and especially the boss fight, are both pretty cool, but the problem is it just doesn't really feel like a zombies map. It feels like I'm playing a different video game genuinely when I play Dead of the Night, and I think that's my issue. Not bad as its own game in a bubble, but it doesn't feel like zombies, and I think that is fundamentally my core issue with Dead of the Night, and probably always will be. So next up we have Nacht Der Untoten, and in all...
What? Dude, I'm shocked Voyage has just not been put on this list yet, but okay.
Honestly, I had a really hard time figuring out where to put this, and more specifically, I'm talking about World at War and maybe even Black Ops 1 Nacht. I think BO3, the Chronicles Nacht Der Untoten remake, doesn't play very well at all, and I think the Wonderfist really dampers the best point of what Nacht
You made it to round 12.
This is literally, again, just a campaign asset from World at War that they threw some zombie models into and just said, have fun. Not the most ingenious design in the world, but obviously, have to have some kind of reverence for it.
IRS got Jack's chat. I mean, like, boys, who I gotta call, bro? Give me the number.
Zombies itself wouldn't have happened if this map didn't exist. And fair enough, but the map itself isn't anything too special, obviously. It's very simple, very bare bones, but again, can be incredibly fun. Nacht Der Untoten is a great...
I also think, chat, okay, do you agree with my thing that if you rank Nacht low, it's bad? Granted, he said this is not a nostalgia list. This is strictly gameplay, right? So that's where I'm like, okay, if it's strictly gameplay, I guess I understand putting Nacht this low. But I mean, dude, it's a fun map for high rounds. It's better than all the other, like, newer maps for high rounds, in my opinion. It's a lot more fun, dude. Based on the criteria Chop is spinning, I mean, I guess I agree.
Experience, if you know, and even the older versions of the map hold up even to this day.
But I mean, Voyage
is still
needs
one
to
of
be
the
next,
best
dude.
maps at making you feel fearful of zombies, or like making the player feel vulnerable. There are no perks unless you're on, you know, BO3 or BO1, and in that case, it really dampers down the point of it. When you're playing World at War or BO1 Nacht with no Juggernog, you genuinely feel the terror that every zombie can down you. And
I mean, I think Nacht was better prior, like 10 years ago type beat, but now I guess as a 2022 list, I can understand.
Blink of an eye. And there's a lot of tension in the gameplay no matter how you're enjoying it. So I think there's a lot of what Nacht does right.
But then also, man, dude, like BO3 makes it fun because you can get all the perks, you can get upgraded weapons. It's fun. It's fun on BO3. So I don't know. I don't think I do agree with this, but
very simple. You know, I'm not trashing on the map or anything, but it's obviously a very scuffed design, but that's okay. And quite frankly, I think it needed to be scuffed because I don't believe it would have caught the fire and attention that it would have had otherwise if they really tried to make this
he's spinning factuals in this entire
map
video, dude.
as the first ever thing. They kind of just were winging it, and that's what made it fun. Next up, we have Alpha Omega, which again,
I am so shocked. Where is Voyage of Despair? Granted, I do agree. Alpha Omega is such a F tier map, but I'm just shocked.
Is another sheer prime example of a map that had a lot of potential on paper, but ultimately in execution, seriously.
I mean, also, Alpha Omega below Voyage? Really? Man, I don't understand what my man sees in Voyage, dude.
Fumbled the bag, and we know that Treyarch was working on this map for the most part, but did get pulled off the project, and it does look like most of it was actually finished up by
I understand why he puts these two, because again, they weren't supposed to exist in a lot of different aspects. But, I mean, Alpha Omega did do something great for the community. It did sort of revitalize BO4 for like a week. I mean, it probably was only a week, but it was still a week, you know?
Division
better
Shanghai,
than what Vanguard
which again
did.
can explain why this map feels so weird in a lot of cases. The layout of Alpha Omega is for the most part just completely pulled and copy pasted from Blackout, especially the lower half of the bunker, and it takes, you know, a lot of the areas that exist outside of the traditional Nuketown experiences and expands on that, which in theory I'm okay with, but the execution was severely flawed. Its Easter egg is interesting, I'll say. It's sort of like Gorod Krovi's quest where you go back to Maschine and do steps over and over again of different, you know, varying varieties of difficulties, and it's just a little bit executed less well than that map. And after spending some more time with it again recently, I've also noticed that just like some other maps, there's a few areas that are completely pointless that I think they had ideas for its function, but I don't think Alpha Omega had enough time in the oven. It just didn't get enough development time, and before Treyarch had to be pulled off the project, and basically Activision Shanghai finished it all up. And as you'll notice, I'm ranking Alpha Omega lower than original Nuketown on Black Ops 2, because while Nuketown itself isn't a perfect map, I think that Alpha Omega lost the point of what Nuketown Zombies really represented. You could argue Nuketown Zombies maybe shouldn't even exist to begin with, like it's sort of unnecessary, and you know, you could make that case, but I think Alpha Omega lost what the entire essence of Nuketown was supposed to be. That is to say, you could have a lot of the gameplay structure of Alpha Omega, but it doesn't have to be Nuketown. It could be any old random facility with a bunker. Not to mention, there's also a lot of very strange choices on Alpha Omega, where to open Pack-a-Punch, you need to clean these valves that more than 4 of them.
One in the chat, if Alpha Omega has quite literally one of the most annoying Pack-a-Punch processes of all time, especially because it's the BO4 Pack-a-Punch. It's not even good. Oh, it's so fucking annoying.
Exist, but there's only 4 of them active at a time, and they go down every couple of rounds. It's incredibly annoying. The highlight of this map certainly comes with the boss fight. It's a fight with the Avogadro inside the bunker, in which you basically fill up soul generators in each of the areas. It's a little bit more interesting than just like a 3-phase deal damage to the boss kind of thing, so I definitely give it some credit for that. And the boss fight is for sure the absolute pillar, the pearl, the gem of this map. But unfortunately, you have to go through a somewhat.
Did you guys like the Alpha Omega boss fight? Yes or no? I'm gonna be honest. I kind of think it's bad. I kind of think like it's unique. I'm not gonna lie, it's unique. I think the thing I don't like is the step where you have to basically use your specialist weapon and bring him back into the pyramid. Like, it just kind of seems, I don't know, a little pointless. But I mean, It's fair. It's unique.
But annoying main Easter egg quest to even get there. If I could just play the boss fight of Alpha Omega over and over again, I would. I just couldn't be bothered to do a lot of the quests to get there. And a lot of the map suffers as a result. The map layout itself, compared to others, is all right. I don't have much trouble with Alpha Omega's layout in general. The wonder weapons are pretty much just copy-pasted ray guns that have elemental effects. And those are fun. You know, they're goofy enough. It doesn't take itself too seriously. So I don't have much problem with Alpha Omega in general. It just, you can really tell that this didn't have enough time in the oven, and it's just a shame. If you need more evidence that Alpha Omega was somewhat rushed, look no further than the Easter egg ending cutscene, which I don't even have to explain to you guys. It's pretty much just like a PowerPoint presentation compared to the like CGI fully rendered cutscenes we were used to in BO3. I mean, it's very obvious that Zombies' budget got cut at this point, and they had to make do with what they had. So fair enough, but Alpha Omega, not one of my favorite maps, but it's all right. So next up is Voyage of Despair.
It took too long for Voyage to come here. One in the chat. I'm very interested to hear what he says.
And I've got some words to say about this one. Very interested. When I was at the Black Ops 4 reveal event and they showed off Voyage of Despair to the world for the first time, I was one of those people. I thought Voyage was going to be literally like Shadows of Evil 2.0. I thought it was going to be the second coming of Christ as a zombies map.
I'm going to be honest, chat, I did not get that feeling, dude. Wow.
I was one of those people that genuinely thought this would overtake everything else prior to it as being the greatest zombies experience of all time.
But boy, was I wrong.
It's unfortunate. I wanted to like this map so bad. I really did, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Voyage of Despair's fatal flaws are numerous, and some of them aren't so obvious, but the general idea is that this was a, as close as you can get, one-to-one recreation of the actual Titanic in real life, ported as a zombies map, and they put, I'm sure, an unbelievable amount of effort into making this map as realistic as it can be, and I'm going to give them credit for that, absolutely, for sure. The problem is, this goes to show that a lot of the times one-to-one realism just doesn't make for the best gameplay experiences. And it's so unfortunate because Voyage of Despair actually has one of the best Treyarch boss fights of all time. I would put it up there with the likes of Legion on Cold War Zombies, also
So I see the way that he ranked the BO4 maps. In a way, he ranked it more about the boss fights rather than
Kino
the maps
Der Toten, Black
itself.
Ops 1.
Which you know what, if he's talking about that way just for the gameplay, in a way, I can understand that. So,
Kino Der Toten, Black
and it makes sense why you put Tog as the least, because it doesn't have a boss fight, right? So in that way, I understand that you could rank Tog as the worst, then Alpha Omega, and then the Dead Knight pick doesn't make any sense, but then Voyage, I guess, does make sense.
Gorod Krovi. It's a genuinely great boss fight, and I would play it again over and over if I could, but it has one of the worst Easter egg quests in all of Zombies, and especially for solo players, it's unbearable. It's pretty much the most homework-heavy quest you'll ever have, I guess, besides Dead of the Night. And again, a lot of the puzzles I have no problem with on paper. It's the fact that zombies exist while you're trying to do them. If you have somebody to watch the zombie, if you're playing co-op, it actually isn't as bad as I'm probably making it seem. You're primarily a solo player trying to do these puzzles with zombies in the map and trying not to end the round. It makes you actually want to go to the retirement home early. And similar to Dead of the Night, but to a way lesser extent, I think they got a little bit too ahead of themselves with these Easter egg quests and putting their focus on that they fell out of touch with being a zombies map. And if you guys didn't know, when Black Ops 4 was first being developed, their original idea was to make this game not even have rounds, and it was just pretty much going to be a constant flow of zombies, more or less.
Chat, would that have been a good idea or a bad idea? If they pulled an Outbreak on BO4, bro. I actually think that would have been really bad, dude. I didn't even know that.
Less as you're doing quest steps. And again, on paper, I would be fine with that, and it sounds like a good idea, but the execution was horribly flawed.
In the execution,
it's just so frustrating and annoying because it has genuinely one of the most amazing zombies boss fights, but unfortunately, it's gatekept by one of the most unpleasant Easter egg zombies quests of all time. So next up, we have Zetsubou No Shima, which is our first...
Again, I think Zetsubou gets so much hate, dude. I'm curious to hear what he says, because Chop has been giving really good points, but I'm very curious to hear what he says. So BL3, the worst is Zetsubou. Again, I think Zetsubou has kind of grown on me, to be honest. I really dislike Zetsubou at launch just because of all the glitches, but I think now it really has grown on me, you know?
Black Ops 3 map to appear on the list so far. Now, aside from all of the, issues with the map on launch, a lot of people remember the glitches and problems that it had. I'm putting all that stuff aside. When you look at the map as it exists right now, and all, technical issues not included, the map itself in its own small bubble isn't too bad. The problem is Zetsubou was surrounded by arguably the 2 best zombies maps of all time, and it does make it look a little bit more rough. Now,
I mean, yeah, but also, dude, Zetsubou's a good map, though, I understand the boss and the Easter egg, but, dude, it's still a fun map, man. That's why I think it's interesting that a lot of gameplay guys dog on Zetsubou just because it's very unique. But I don't think it's, this bad.
We'll say Zetsubou still isn't a perfect map. It's not, I wouldn't even classify it as a great map. It's got some really neat ideas. I will say its mini-boss, I'm not in love.
Chat, I think Zetsubou is a good map. I could say it's a great map, dude. I don't know.
With Thrasher, isn't super rewarding as an enemy. It does have a mini boss fight as a giant spider, which is fun.
Definitely
its
not
actual
a
main
bad
Easter egg
map,
boss
though.
fight isn't anything to write home about. In fact, it's probably one of the weaker Treyarch boss fights in general.
I agree
but Treyarch
with
have
that,
gone on
though,
record
true.
mentioning that Zetsubou, they kind of know was gonna maybe be a little bit more polarizing than something like a Der Eisendrache or another map of that nature. But this map was necessary in sort of laying the technological groundwork for future maps to come.
Blood is
this map
above
was
this,
very
by the way. I forgot about Blood of the Dead. Well, okay, I'm curious to hear his opinion, because again, it's not nostalgia-based list. It's gameplay only, which is super different,
so obviously,
right?
And not all of it worked. I will say it's not unplayable or anything, and it's, can be a quite enjoyable time, but it's not the most, optimized zombies map, or even optimized for fun we've ever seen. I remember when this map released,
Chat,
and it was
Blood or Zetsubou? I'm curious to hear what people say about that.
For sure, a pretty pronounced low point for the community. A lot of people were very upset with zombies at the time, even though we had literally just gotten 2 absolute banger maps before then. This one,
yeah, I think I would say Zetsubou, but
had to, take a dip a little bit. But I remember the community being really upset at this map when it came out. But right now, we can sort of look back at it a little bit more retrospectively. And while it's not,
I think he's gonna put Blood next because it's still
the best zombies map of all time.
But I'm curious.
Top 2 map, it's not amazing. It's certainly decent. So coming up next is Blood of the Dead on Black Ops 4. And it's really unfortunate because this single-handedly may have had the most hype built up around it that a zombies map has ever possessed.
Yeah,
and you'll remember that at the Black Ops 4 reveal, it's oh, this is a Mob of the Dead remaster with the premise characters. Literally what
Chat, you guys remember motherfuckers were on the news. On the news with signs saying remaster Mob of the Dead. That's I feel so bad for those homies now, dude.
Wrong. No, don't get me wrong. This isn't an absolute, sheer disaster of a map. In fact, there's
it's
a lot
definitely not a
like.
disaster.
Not only the aesthetic and the atmosphere are.
I mean, in a lot of ways, the Easter egg is an absolute disaster. The map itself is still a playable map. But
the best zombies
it's the
map
Easter
of all
egg
time.
that just kills this map.
Kino Der Toten, Black Ops 1.
It's actually got a few of the best Easter egg quest steps of all time. Unfortunately, it's also a mixed bag with some of the worst steps of all time as well. I think the idea with Blood of the Dead more or less was supposed to be what they originally wanted to do with Mob, which was have more of the expanded version of Alcatraz Island. Obviously, Mob of the Dead had to be what it was because they were constrained by the hardware at the time. But even so, with that roadblock in mind, they completely optimized everything about Mob of the Dead in terms of its layout and even its Easter egg quest, which again, we'll talk about Mob a little bit later in the video. But with Blood of the Dead, it seems like a lot of the new areas and additions don't really gel well with what originally made Mob's gameplay loop so far.
Also, chat, the more I play Blood, the less I like the boss fight. To be honest, I don't like the Blood boss fight. It is kind of worse than Zetsubou to me now. I don't know why, but it's just something I just don't enjoy. I don't know.
I like to describe this map's weaknesses as death by 1,000 paper cuts. There's a million little things about Blood of the Dead that really denigrate the experience, and I'll just name a few. One of them being the fact that the Pack-a-Punch machine teleports to 3 different locations, which on its own isn't a bad thing, but there's no indicator in-game that tells you where the Pack-a-Punch machine is. Similarly to how the mystery box always has a light that tells you where it's currently located. That doesn't exist for the Pack-a-Punch machine. You just have to run around and guess where it is, and because of the map's really clunky the layout isn't always, the most optimal experience. Also, inside the warden's office, the hole to get into that secret room is only big enough for one player model, so you either collide with the zombie or you collide with a teammate if you're trying to get in and out of there. Very annoying, as it's completely fundamental for doing the main quest. The Easter egg steps range from being very fun and some of the best in Zombies, where you, like, for example, escort a zombie soul through the cafeteria into the other side of the prison so he can escape while you have the zombies, attacking him all the while. It's great. That is an amazing step. But then you also have a bird that you have to find 3 separate rounds that has 42
locations,
like
boys. Can I drink in the shop for 42?
The boss fight itself is what I would say mediocre at best in terms of its gameplay. The cutscene, however, is the best in Zombies in my opinion, hands down. But I'm not really, I guess, ranking story and cutscenes. But for what that's worth, it is.
Okay, this is something I don't understand, chat. There is 42 part locations or bird locations for Blood of the Dead, yet it is still higher on his list than Dead of the Night. Think about that. Think about that. Yes, Dead of the Night has a lot of locations, but it's not 42. Think about that.
The best in Zombies, in my opinion. Definitely nails the atmosphere, nails the emotion, but to get there, you kind of have to go through some pain, it feels like, and that's, again, a lot of my issues with BO4. Blood of the Dead had some really lofty and, quite frankly, interesting ideas, but much of the execution was just completely fumbled, and it is unfortunate, but it is what it is. So, coming up just after that is Firebase Z.
Wow! I do agree with this, but dude, Firebase Z getting treated this brutally? Man, what do you guys think about this?
And I talked about this way more
extensively. He hasn't brought up any of the other World at War maps
but
either.
Firebase Z, I would say, was probably the weakest link out of all the maps that Cold War had to offer. Reason being, it didn't have anything too special that made it stand out from the rest. I think it's extremely generic in terms of its setting and also its layout, and it's just...
Chat, I'm going to say this. If Firebase Z had a different wonder weapon that was better, would the map be better, yes or no?
General gameplay flow,
I think
the
so,
boss
personally.
fight itself is incredibly weak, even for Treyarch.
I think so just because I don't like the Reiki. The Reiki is just not, I don't know.
Saying that because compared to other studios,
boss fights I do agree the map is still fundamentally flawed.
Never been Treyarch's strong suit, although they're getting much better at it. But Firebase Z was just like, it's literally just the order that you encounter in the map already with more health and stationary. It's
chat, Firebase Z, do we have W or L for Firebase Z? I'm curious to hear what people say.
Not super fun, but I will say those are a lot of the negatives about Firebase Z. There is actually quite a lot to like about this map. The quest itself, while pretty easy and straightforward,
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's
actually quite fun to do, and especially in
I can understand this.
It's got a lot of replayability, whether you're just shooting zombies, playing for high rounds, or just doing its Easter egg. The map's wonder weapon, the Reiki, is genuinely a ton of fun, and there's a neat little quest that you can do in Firebase Z in order to obtain it. Nothing you have to do in this map is like incredibly annoying, where you have to reference guides to get all of the equipment and stuff the map has to offer.
Do you know what a dartboard is? I do not. That's the only thing I have to reference on fucking Firebase Z, bro.
It's just that Firebase Z doesn't do anything inherently wrong. It just doesn't do anything spectacular. It's exceptionally mid as a zombies map. Coming up just after that, and speaking of sort of mid, we have Shi No Numa. Now, I am specifically referring to mostly BO.
I think most people don't disagree with this Shi No Numa being here, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Shi No Numa. A few interesting things about this map really quick is the fact that this was the introduction of actual boss zombie rounds for the first time, or mini bosses in the form of Hellhounds, which was pretty groundbreaking at the time, and also the addition of the Wunderwaffe as a new staple wonder weapon, which would really set precedents for zombies going forward.
This map's gonna look so really bad did a lot right.
Best zombies map of all time.
A fun playing it, whether it's World at War, BO1, or BO3. Completely broken on the World at War version, by the way. I just find this map kind of boring, honestly. It needs to be noted as well that this was pretty much the first time that Treyarch really allowed players to open up the playable space and run around and have more room to work with.
I know, but most people weren't there at the time when Shi No Numa was released, and then everyone just went to play Der Rise, which is why this has got to be the most overshadowed map of all time, in my opinion.
Obviously, because otherwise we were just confined to both Nacht Der Untoten and Verruckt in the Asylum. So this is a big step for zombies, and I think it was a necessary one. But in terms of how Shi No Numa is and how it holds up in 2022, I just find it kind of boring.
I don't
personally.
think
nothing crazy wrong with it or no offensive features or anything like that. It's just, I don't know, not really my thing. It doesn't hold my attention for very long, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can probably relate. Yeah. I do also remember it being one of my least favorite maps when the map was out as well. I'd rather play Nacht Der Untoten. I think most casuals dislike, but either way, it is fairly interesting. So up next, we have Classified from Black Ops 4 Zombies. This is a remake of the original map 5 on BO1, and I'm actually ranking this lower than original 5 because to me, Classified has all of the problems that...
Chat, do you guys like Classified or 5 better? I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know.
5 has, but with none of the sauce, and I'll explain what I mean. 5 is an extremely effective map.
I really like them both, but I think I do like original 5 better just because there's something so scary about original 5 that even to this day, it kind of, you don't get the Verruckt feeling fully, but it's like you still get that like, shit, like this map is fucking horrifying. You know,
being chaotic and making you feel like genuinely tense in the early game setup, and honestly most of the gameplay. Classified, not so much. It's the same layout, but with Black Ops 4 systems, especially with gobblegums or elixirs, specialist weapons in particular, a lot of this stuff really deflates a lot of the tension that it had. Not to mention, there's also no Pentagon Thief anymore that would come every few rounds and try to steal your weapons, which should have brought back for Classified addition to 5 at the time.
I do agree.
And there's also just, I guess, it's the same Pack-a-Punch setup to get there than original 5, just with a fetch quest involved.
All I know is that
it doesn't really add anything new or interesting to the gameplay, just makes it a bit more artificial if you ask me. But with that in mind, I actually really like Classified, all things considered. It's probably the best map on BO4 just to jump in and shoot zombies. You don't want to worry about setting up a whole bunch of things or looking at YouTube guides to get wonder weapons. You can literally just load this up and start shooting zombies, and it is ideally the best map for that. There is a main Easter egg quest on this map, as well as a small side quest to get the Winter's Howl. The main quest is getting to round 150 to get the cutscene.
This is the biggest L. And you know what, chat? I always forget about Classified having an Easter egg because truly Classified is the worst Easter egg. Truly. It's not Blood. It's not Die Rise. It's not Transit. It's fucking Classified. Classified is dog shit. That's what my man Milo saying. Okay. Milo wants to come check out some shit next week, dude. Hey, dude. That'd be sick, dude.
I'm not kidding. That's literally how you beat Classified, and to my knowledge, it takes like 10 to 12 hours to do that on average, so most people couldn't be bothered to even go and do this. I don't know why they didn't just put it at round 100, which is like kind of the milestone.
And I think a lot of people don't realize the problem with BO4 was like it was releasing at a time where Fortnite was coming out, and Fortnite was a game that was ultra simplistic and did incredible, when BO4 needed to be ultra simplistic and it went ultra complicated, which is why I think a lot of people don't know
that a lot of people go for. But either way, they put the cutscene at round 150. They also lost a lot of the chaoticness that original 5 had in the way the teleporters work. So when you're down there in the laboratory on original 5, you're going to get sent to a random location when you go through a teleporter. And
Chad, do you guys like the Classified teleporters or the 5 ones?
In Classified, there's an icon that tells you exactly which floor you're going to end up in, dude. Which I guess from a gameplay design standpoint is probably better, but there is something kind of interesting about just not knowing where you're going to go. You can end up in a great situation. You could end up in a terrible situation by using the teleporters on 5, where on Classified it is a bit more calculated, so take that for what it's worth. Besides those, I don't even really have that many criticisms.
I mean, the other thing is, though, you're not playing 5, in my opinion, to go for an ultra high round unless you're a god at zombies, right? Like 5 is genuinely one of the hardest round 100s of all time. So, I mean, if you're going for high rounds, yeah, Classified, in my opinion, would be the better one to play.
Classified. In fact, there's a lot that I really do like about the map. I think it plays in Black Ops 4 systems moderately well. It could be a little better, but it's not like a terrible offender. It's not as good as original 5 in my opinion, but it's serviceable and it really gets the job done. It's got some neat ideas. It's just kind of mid as a remake, I think. Next up just after that is Shangri-La on Black Ops 1, and this is a super polarizing map in the community because its difficulty relative to other maps in the game that was featured in Black Ops 1 is either either a big turnoff to people or it's something that makes them like the map even more. So it's quite unique and strange in that fact, but the map itself is pretty hard. Whether you're talking about just surviving and shooting zombies and trying to survive high rounds, or if you're attempting to do the Easter egg, which
any
you
Shang lovers in the chat,
or Shang haters, and even then, it requires probably the most teamwork and communication that a zombies Easter egg has
whatsoever. I used to, but I don't think I'm a hater.
Kind of separates it amongst the pack.
I think I'm a Shang
all of these steps designed super well, and all of the like mini boss enemies, maybe not necessarily. There are some
the Easter egg for Shang is so much fun too.
The map is literally meant just to choke you out, and it's not even necessarily a flaw. It's in fact very intentional. There's not a whole lot of space to move around, and so you have to get very creative in terms of how you actually maneuver around the map, which is very different to a lot of the Black Ops 1 map designs. So it's something different in that regard. The Wonder Weapon itself does zero damage at all. It just makes the zombies small, like baby size, so that you can kick them around, and it's like, that's fun enough. It's a really unique concept for a Wonder Weapon that does zero damage, and we haven't really seen much of that in modern day zombies, where a Wonder Weapon doesn't exactly kill zombies, but you can set up to do something like that. Again, it's just more of that Jimmy Zielinski weird, like creative, chaotic brain stuff. I really don't have many bad things to say about Shangri-La at all, honestly. I think it's a very good change of pace for zombies maps that tend to get monotonous and boring. Shangri-La is a good mix-up and will certainly crank up the difficulty on you for at least a little bit, and I think every now and again that's needed. I will say the Zombies Chronicles remake of Shangri-La is absolutely gorgeous visually, and from a gameplay perspective, still holds pretty true to what made Shangri-La addicting and iconic to begin with. So I really like both versions, and I guess it depends on what kind of mood I am in to determine which one I'll play. But Shangri-La actually a pretty decent map in my opinion. Coming up just after that, I'm going to give this to Verruckt. And
Verruckt above Shang. Interesting.
I really think that both the World at War, Black Ops 1, and BO3 version hold up extremely well. Verruckt was iconic for
I actually do agree. I think the BO3 version makes Verruckt such a better map, man.
Reasons. Number one being the introduction of the concept of perks to zombies, which, originally were just Quick Revive, Juggernog, Double Tap, and Speed Cola. Also, traps were first introduced on this map, and also World at War was hailed as one of the most difficult maps, not only because of Verruckt having a very tight layout, but also the super sprinters that appeared on the World at War version are faster than the player, and they're absolutely insane. I really think that what Verruckt does is take Nacht Der Untoten's gameplay loop and just improve on it. Literally, I would just say that Verruckt is straight up a better designed version of Nacht Der Untoten. You still have the incredibly tight spaces that make for a lot of tension in your gameplay, but you have a few new things to get creative with, such as, again, perks and traps and things of that nature. Still no real wonder weapons besides the ray gun, at least on the World at War version. The BO1 build of Nacht has the Winter's Howl, which is kind of pathetic as a wonder weapon. It's not really that great on the map, but there are a lot of strategies that are super fun to run on Verruckt, and it's still regarded as one of, if not the hardest map in zombies, according to a lot of people.
Definitely
when Verruckt released, I think Treyarch was literally just trying to hone in on one particular gameplay loop and attempting to improve on that with each map, and I really think it's just a massive jump in quality between Nacht Der Untoten and Verruckt. They really got their act together in that, and then as the World at War DLC season went on, they generally improved the quality of their maps. Again, I really think that Verruckt is still better than Shi No Numa, in my opinion, but not only did they take Verruckt and improve on the formula and add new things, they, in that general direction...
Chat, you guys like Verruckt more than Shi No Numa? I think a lot more people like Verruckt more than Shi No Numa, because it's interesting that Verruckt was a direct upgrade from Nacht, but a lot of people don't see that with Shi No Numa. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it's so subjective, though. I like Shi No Numa for a lot of strange reasons that are, either glitches or, high rounds or something, But I think it's all just dependent,
Trended
it's all just dependent on what
is just
you
a really good example of finding a formula and making it better. So big fan of this map. Next up, we have the absolutely iconic Black Ops 1 map, Ascension. And I feel like if you ask a lot of more casual fans of zombies what some of their favorite maps are, I would probably bet that Ascension is at least one of them. It's very memorable to many people who played zombies back in the day, and for a lot of reasons. It's a really unique location, and it also has the first ever main Easter egg that zombies ever had, really. In terms of difficulty, it's certainly one of the easier maps in Zombies, as there's like vast swaths of wide open space that you can utilize, and the fact that there's so many like wonder weapons and
such
like,
a great starter map
dolls, the
to
Gersh
learn
device,
Zombies,
Thunder Gun,
man.
stuff like that to help keep you alive. That being said, it isn't like a walk in the park as a map, and there's quite a lot you have to do in order to set up. But the Easter egg itself is also pretty interesting. It's not overly complicated, but it's a little something to do if you want to explore a bit further. I have some of my best memories playing with friends on this map, and spending countless hours
Ascension is such a co-op map.
I don't think it has one of the most like ingenious map designs of all time, but in terms of being one of the first DLC for BO1, it's pretty good.
I think Ascension is way more
co-op. The one fatal flaw, the
Solo.
weak link in Ascension, however, comes in the form of its special rounds, and these are monkeys that are really tiny. That
nukes are what solve it in BO3. Like the Dead of Nuclear Winter Gobblegum just saves the whole problem of this map, which I love. Or raindrops.
Fall from the sky and steal your
You got to
perks.
play in a
this
certain way
isn't
for
so
it to
bad
be
in
fun.
co-op, which is fundamentally how Ascension was designed. It was designed for
such a
4 people
co-op
to be playing this map
dude.
at once, and you can have everybody defending a perk. In solo, it's significantly more annoying to defend all of them, and in Zombies Chronicles, the Black Ops 3 remake, really there isn't a whole lot you can do exactly to fend them off solo besides using
best
like
Zombies
a
map of all
Gobblegum
time.
or whatever. But in
Kino Der
BO1, they're
Toten, Black Ops
incredibly
1.
frustrating.
Yeah,
so
BO1
I'd say
Ascension
besides
is
the
just
monkeys,
not fun
Ascension is
solo.
nearly like a cutout map. I also feel like Ascension became
for high
the
rounds,
blueprint in which a lot of maps were modeled after,
Very
in the coming years
true,
for Zombies,
dude,
having, a new wonder weapon, a new perk, and
Very
a main
true.
Easter egg. They would really
Path
follow that
location
format as
sucks.
time goes on. Coming up
I don't
next, we
think I agree
have
with that, dude.
Forsaken, which is DLC 4 in Black Ops Cold War. And generally, I like a lot of the Cold War maps, and this being the final real DLC send-off for this game,
I
it was
agree.
very
I agree with Forsaken here. I do
strange. So
agree.
this map takes place in basically
It's
the red
literally-
light,
we
green
literally
light
just played it
mission
today.
of the campaign,
Foreskin
although it's
is just like-
significantly more extended.
It's
got
a
some
mid-map,
interesting
to be
ideas
honest.
with its
It's
wonder
right in the
weapon,
middle.
and its boss fight is actually
Yeah, it's
pretty
a solid
good. Its
spot.
main
Like, I
quest
don't-
is
I don't
decent. It's
think I would
very short.
complain
The
about
problem
this.
is the map layout is honestly really bad. And the
I
thing is,
agree.
Treyarch
I
usually
agree.
has at
It's
least
not really
moderately
even a
decent
map.
or
It's
passable
5
layouts for their
sections
Zombies
of
maps, but
other
for some
maps,
reason, I don't know
you know?
what it was. Maybe it was time constraint.
layout is definitely
Maybe
the
it
worst
was
part.
like just a design thing. I'm not sure, but the layout of Forsaken is generally what
Yeah,
I would
see, that's
consider
the thing I don't make sense. That doesn't make sense, right? We were all thinking when Forsaken dropped, they're like, okay, they're developing Vanguard. But then it's like Duran Fong released. And so then it's like, okay, so then what were they doing for Forsaken? Right? I don't know, bro. I don't,
There's big chunks of the map that are all like crucial,
just
but
doesn't make
they
sense.
are severely disconnected from one another. And within some of those like subsections, there's rooms that again serve like no purpose. It's sort of like Die Rise in that way, where there's just areas of the map that
The
serve
boss
no
is
purpose to
better
even
than
play in or
Firebase Z,
have
though.
anything
It's
like Easter
so
egg
much
related.
better.
I
I
will say
do
Forsaken
agree.
does have the best side Easter eggs in all of Cold War.
I
they
agree with
really
that as
found their
well.
footing with that
I
as the
agree
season
with
went
that.
on,
Yeah.
and especially in the
I
arcade,
do
there's
agree
some
with
really
that.
neat stuff you can do.
That's
Side
so
quests are
true.
great. Main quest was a little on the weak side, but the
160
boss fight
Jack,
was pretty good. It's
I need
decent.
to
If this
deck
map
you
did
them
not
out.
have a
You
strong
need to
boss
sleep.
fight and it also didn't have the really fun
Thank you
side
for the
Easter eggs,
160,
I would
you're
actually rank this map
legendary, bro.
lower than Firebase Z when it comes to Cold War. But because of those two factors, I actually think
No,
it's
I
a,
agree,
at
man.
least a step up in that
Yeah,
regard.
I think the
Forsaken
side
may not
Easter
have
eggs
been
are
the
cool,
like
and the
ideal
boss
ending to
ones
Cold
are
War,
cool.
but it's basically setting up for the continuation of the story in supposedly Treyarch's next game. But all in all,
Yeah.
Forsaken has some neat ideas. It's just the map layout is almost unbearable. So other than that, it's okay. It's still a
I
pretty
do agree.
mid-tier
The
map, all
map
things
layout
considered,
is
and it's
just-
truly middle of
it's
the
just
pack
no
in my
cohesion,
opinion.
man.
So coming up next is what, despite what Chaos X Silencer might want to have you believe, is indeed not the best Zombies map of all time.
No!
Kino Der Toten Black Ops 1. But basically, yeah, this map is I actually think
best
it's a true like
Zombies map
mid-tier
of
map.
all
I think
time,
it's really
dude.
good as an on-disc map, and perhaps the best map to
Not
onboard
the best
new players
Zombies map
into
of
the
all
concept
time,
Zombies.
bro.
Now, as a lot of you guys know, originally
I mean, chat, at this point, Kino's just, it honestly, it was a really good map for me when I started. It was my first map. But even then, when I have that bias, I still don't think it's as good as a lot of what casuals say. you know? And it is not the best zombies map of all time, man.
Kino Der Toten was meant to be a DLC for World at War, but because of scheduling and how the games were going to be released, they had to make this the on-disc map for Black Ops 1, and you can tell the difference in the way that Kino Der Toten plays versus every other BO1 map that came after it. They're just fundamentally designed different, but that's okay. I think Kino is simple enough, and people remember
the best zombies map of all time.
For a reason.
Kino Der Toten, Black Ops 1.
Of course, Chaos, let's relax, buddy. Let's relax, okay?
The best zombies map of all time.
What did I just say, Chaos?
Kino Der Toten.
What did I just say? Let's relax, dude.
A lot of people, it's their first ever zombies experience, and it's going to be remembered that
True
way.
Chaos.
And again, it has all of the basics in play. You can learn how to use wonder weapons, you learn how to turn on the power and do little small things to get the pack-a-punch, and it can be played in a variety of ways in terms of high rounds. You can train on the stage, or you can do like fire trap strats. There's a lot of ways you can play Kino, and it's very palatable for anybody. And if we're basing this off of pure, like,
I also think that, dude, I'm actually kind of glad that Kino doesn't have an Easter egg, because if it did, I think people would really suck its dick hard. Like, they suck its dick right now, but if this map had an Easter egg, ooh, it would have been something else. Which is kind of why I'm also a little bit glad that Chronicles didn't add an Easter egg for it as well, you know?
Enjoyment or fun you might get out of it. I actually think a lot of people probably had the most fun in zombies on Kino Der Toten. I had an absolute ton of fun playing this map, and still do in a lot of ways.
The best zombies map,
like, its design, it doesn't do anything crazy that like a World at War map didn't already do. And for that, it just doesn't bring anything too special to the table other than being the onboarding map.
Shut up, bro. He's got to get his opinion out.
Go so far as to say that Kino Der Toten actually is the most palatable
zombies map of all time.
Probably the best on disc map in terms of
the best on disc map of all time.
Introduced to the mechanics.
I mean, I could agree with that.
It's not overwhelming like Shadows of Evil was for a lot of people on BO3. It's not Transit and that absolute nightmare if that was your first zombies experience on BO2. I doubt
Chat, was anybody's first zombies experience Transit here? God bless your soul if it was. I mean, if it, dude, there are actually people, dude. God bless your poor souls.
BO4, like Blood of the Dead or Voyage of Despair, was very good at onboarding anybody at all, and so you kind of get what I'm saying. Like, Kino Der Toten's great, it's very iconic, but it's the best map at getting people into the game, and that's about it. So coming up next on our list is actually the map that comes directly after Kino Der Toten.
Dude, chat, I am very happy that zombie YouTubers are putting 5 over Kino. That's such a Drake in the chat, dude. I love that. I love
this
that.
Is 5, or I guess the
so
unremastered version of
are
Classified.
That,
this is the original build,
5,
and in my opinion, the way that canonically this map should be played in terms of its like actual experience and the way that it was intended. The differences between 5 and Classified are a few. Number one being the teleporters being random in here, which adds a lot of the.
Also, just look at the gameplay. Look how much more dark it is and scary. Like, you can just instantly feel the ambience difference.
Element to the map that it desperately needs, but when you think about it, 5 kind of works with the same skeleton and structure that Kino Der Toten has. It's just rearranged in a slightly more specialized and difficult way. You have a few more added elements, like having to build traps. You have the Pentagon Thief to contend with, and also the random teleporters. Stuff like that that will make the map somewhat less palatable for the average zombies player. And this is why a lot of people don't like 5. They find it a little bit more oppressive than Kino. And I think just having the 2 maps exist next to one another is a really good thing. You have the map just to go on and shoot zombies and chill on, Kino Der Toten, and then you have something that can crank the heat up a little bit more without being too, annoying, and that being 5. I don't think 5's a great introductory map in all honesty, although you can unlock it on Black Ops 1, and it's probably one of the first maps you're going to encounter if you're a brand new zombies player on BO1. I know it was for me. If it's not Kino, it's probably going to be 5. So not great for onboarding new players, but is a really good challenge even if you've been playing zombies for years, and I quite enjoy 5 even to this day. Next up is a map that kind of has the opposite problem of Transit for me, where like objectively on paper, not
right in the middle of the video. Interesting. I'm
Maschine
curious
is
to
a
hear what you
really
say.
well-designed map on BO4. It's a pretty good on-disc map for onboarding people.
Low.
Fairly simple and straightforward layout. The map makes sense. The Easter egg is pretty good, and the boss fight's actually what I would consider to be great. But I don't know what it is, but I just wasn't able ever to fall in love with this map. And I don't know if I'm in the minority here. There's other people that agree. I just wasn't able to
anybody
really
agree with
get
Chop
into
here?
9. I don't know what it is exactly, whether it's the setting or the atmosphere not really doing it for me. I do know that, you know, honestly, I like pretty much most of Jason Blundell's maps, and that's why a lot of his BO3 ones and other stuff haven't even been talked about yet. And from what I understand, 9 is the map on BO4 that Jason Blundell had the least to do creatively with. So the more I think about it, that might be an explanation as to why this map just didn't really, like, it didn't hit that same groove that especially we were all used to coming after BO3. I'm curious,
when Black Ops 4 launched, what was the map you played the most? This is something I'm curious about. What was the map you guys played the most? Because I think for me, it was Classified and 9. Those were the two I played the most, I think. And I only played Blood to hunt for the egg. And then once that egg was hunted, I was like, nope. I was like, no Megalo, bro.
3. A lot of the BO4 maps that Jason Blundell
did
have a lot to do with. At least you can tell that it had his style sort of imprinted on it. But I never really felt that with 9, and perhaps that's the reason. Again, nothing really inherently wrong or to complain about with 9. If I'm ranking it just based on its like mechanics and design, it's, I would say, pretty high tier or at least middle of the pack.
We talked about this before, Chop, but I always say I think 9 would be such a better map with Ultimus. One in the chat if you agree with that, 2 in the chat if you don't. Dude, if Ultimus was on 9, like the original Primus characters, like original Takio, Richtofen, oh my god, it would have been fire, bro.
If I'm ranking it based on how much fun I've had with the map, honestly, it would be in my lower tier of maps. Anyways, next, I'm kind of putting this off in its own bracket. This is...
I'm curious. Okay, Chop is an Outbreak lover. So I'm very interested to hear what you say here.
Outbreak on Cold War. I'm not comparing this to like a direct one-to-one to any round-based map because you can't really compare Outbreak to round-based maps as they serve entirely different functions. But I did want to mention this entire mode as it was a very big part of Cold War's structure as an entire game. And I would go so far as to say that Outbreak is a generally very good game mode. While it's not perfect, and I definitely took it apart a lot more in my Cold War retrospective, Outbreak brought a lot to the table, and it's certainly the biggest risk they took in Cold War. Or at least I would say the biggest risk that Treyarch took in recent years that really paid off. They brought onboarded a ton of new players to the game that were previously maybe introduced through Warzone or maybe even multiplayer and brought them into more of the zombie experience.
I still eventually would like to do around 100 on Outbreak.
The best zombies map of all time.
But God bless my
Kino Der Toten,
that is going to take so long.
Where Outbreak falls apart a little bit is that a lot of the maps themselves aren't really zombies maps. They're, again, reused MP maps or fire team maps, whatever. But the mode as a whole, and especially a lot of the Easter eggs and boss fights that it can bring, they really show the potential for where the game could go and what...
I think Outbreak peaked with the Legion boss fight. I really like that Easter egg, and I think it's really well crafted. I hate the second Easter egg on Outbreak, but
the second draft of this Outbreak mode could be. Again, I just happen to be throwing Outbreak right here in the video, but in terms of like its ranking, it's sort of off in its own bracket. It's doing its own thing. I don't like to compare this to round-based maps because they're not at all the same, and they shouldn't be. But I thoroughly enjoy Outbreak, and I really hope they continue and expand on the formula that they brought in Cold War. It's a great game mode, and I know a lot of you guys seem to like it as well. But coming up next, we have Moon on Black Ops 1. This does have a BO3 iteration on Chronicles as well, and at least visually on Chronicles,
I don't think Moon is
looks completely different.
Map.
The map looks way better in the remastered version. That is to say, though, that the gameplay of the Black Ops 1 version of Moon is still pretty good. Like it definitely holds up. I will say it's probably one of the easier maps in Black Ops 1, and they really started to toy around with like overpowered wonder weapons, especially as the season went on. And as some of you may know, but some of you may not,
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I'll ever play BO1 Moon ever again. Like, there is literally BO3 Moon is just such a good remaster. I don't think I will ever go back and play BO1.
For BO1 was actually supposed to be a map that takes place in Paris, but Jimmy Zielinski wanted something that was a bit more grand in scope.
The Paris
and so
map,
how do you
dude,
get more grand than literally going to the moon
map,
and blowing up Earth?
to
Pretty good
dude.
as a
Such
finale for
map.
BO1, and it certainly set up the events of Black Ops 2 quite nicely. I will say the
Paris.
moon
That's
has
why
a
Tokyo
lot
Dempsey
of
Rick
problems
off,
with its design. Map layout is probably one of the worst in Zombies.
No,
Forsaken's certainly
My
worse,
man's
but
got
Moon's pretty
God.
bad. Moon has also maybe one of the worst mini bosses of all time, the
dude.
slow astronaut that kind of sneaks around the map. If it grabs you, it's probably
Dude,
gonna take a
I
perk.
do have to say the astronaut is one of the scariest bosses. If you're trying to do like round 100 runs on BO3 for Moon, dude, he's so scary, man.
And there
You
isn't
literally have to put a trip mine up as basically an alarm system for when he's coming
what you
into
can
the
do
map,
to get
dude.
out of it, but
It's terrifying.
unfortunately
The
it's
breathing,
constantly
yeah, it's
respawning, and
terrifying.
it doesn't have very much
Easily
of
one of the
an
scariest
indicator that
bosses.
it's around. Like you can hear a little radio chatting, but that's really about it. And it also doesn't give you any drops for taking it out either. It's pretty much a mini boss that exists only to annoy you. Way more manageable to
Very
deal
true.
with in the
Yeah,
Black
it
Ops
gives
3
no
Chronicles
reward,
versions of the map,
unfortunately.
but yeah, in BO1 it's sort of not really it.
I
The main
hate it
Easter
on
egg is
BO1,
pretty
yeah,
fun in Moon,
I agree.
although it's very heavily related to your RNG. You have to get certain excavators to come down at a certain time. You need a bunch of things out of the mystery box, and which, if you're playing solo, requires you to
Ammo
trade
fix the
them in and
boss?
out. So you're not even
Are there
guaranteed
alternate
to be
ammo
able
types?
to do it.
I mean,
Just-
true.
You have to get a really
True,
lucky.
but
game.
on
If you're doing
BO1,
co-op,
he
it
is
isn't
so
as
fucking
bad,
annoying
but
to
the
deal with.
Easter egg itself is really not cut out for
That's
solo
why I don't
players,
think I will
although
ever play the
technically
BO1
at least
version.
half of it is possible. So I have this
So as I
theory
said,
that
Outbreak, you said it just
DLC4
before
for
it.
every Zombies game, I would say this is true up until Black Ops 4. The DLC4 map is
can
usually
trap the
the
astronaut
blueprints
BO1, but
for
don't you have to
how
glitch
the
him out?
next game's formula
I think
is
I
going to be
remember how
designed.
you
So
do
in this
that.
case, Moon was basically the blueprints of a Black Ops 2 map, and where Origins is
true.
kind of the blueprints of a BO3 map. I'll
BO3,
explain that
and
later.
then
Moon at this
Rev
point
BO4.
essentially started to find its footing with main Easter egg quests, and Jimmy Zielinski
Is Nacht Der Toten a blueprint for Cold War, though? I feel like that's the only one that doesn't make sense.
The best Zombies map of all time.
I think
started
that's the
getting
Kino Der
really
Toten Black Ops
comfortable with what makes a zombies quest fun. Also with Moon,
Thank
the
you,
majority of the
NSMG,
zombies
for the
community
promise
didn't
well.
even really know about Easter eggs, I would say, until Moon, when they became significantly more mainstream. Everyone wanted to see the ending of Moon, and by that
That's
point,
so
everybody
true.
more or less
Moon
expected
definitely
some kind of
popularized
main
Easter eggs.
Easter egg. You could
That's
call
why
it that
for
to be
BO2
in the
is
zombies map
so
going forward,
huge,
and
dude.
obviously they would do that with
Are you
Transit
tired?
and every BO2
Not
map.
too
but
bad, but
Moon
I mean,
really,
after
I
this
would
video,
say,
I'm
established
probably
the
chill, chat.
idea of Easter eggs in the mainstream heart of Zombies fans. And despite all of the other flaws that Moon has, maybe in terms of its map layout or just other design choices, you at least got to give it credit for bringing the idea of Easter eggs to the mainstream of Zombies.
Of course,
but just after that is going to
always.
be the on-disc map for Cold War,
Ooh,
D
D-Machine.
It's one of my personal
Chat,
favorites, although
agree
I
or
don't think it's
disagree?
like the best designed map ever in Zombies. We've certainly seen a little bit better.
I
would still say
always give D Machine such a reverence, man, because D Machine did something that not a lot of Zombies maps have done in a long time. Which is why I just, dude, I know it's a good map, but for me, it just kind of pushes into that great tier when I see what D Machine did with the community. Like, it's such a good starter map, man. Fucking love D Machine.
It's
man.
pretty high tier though. It does make sense in terms of getting players
does
onboarded
everything
to
it
this
needs
game
to
in
do
particular,
quite
as its
well.
Easter egg, its main
Except
quest
for maybe
isn't
the boss
really
fight.
too difficult at all.
You know?
And high rounds are pretty accessible to new players, which again is more of just a Cold War thing. If you want a better in-depth review of this map in particular, I would watch my Cold War retrospective. But suffice to say, D Machine really did what it needed to do for Cold War Zombies, which was get players familiar with the game.
Yeah,
I don't have a whole
fully
lot to say about D
Fully
Machine
agree.
already that I haven't already mentioned. I just think it's all around a very well-rounded map. There isn't a whole lot of fatal flaws to it at all. I would say
fully
maybe
agree.
it's lacking in the like side quest Easter egg department. There
Yeah, I
isn't a
guess
whole
that's
lot
the
to
only-
do outside
the
of the main
only
quest,
truth.
but that's really about it. If this was packed with a little bit
But
more
yeah, I
like
fully
side
agree.
events
I
to
fully agree.
encounter, then perhaps it would be one of the best Zombies maps
But
of all
it's
time.
definitely better
it is
than
very
Forsaken,
solid
in
from
my
a design
opinion.
point nonetheless, and
For
I
sure.
actually think it's one of the better ones. But
Yeah.
moving on after that, we have Nuketown
Wow,
Zombies, which
chat. I am a Nuketown hater. I always say this. I know a lot of my fellow zombie YouTubers like Pat love Nuketown. I'm a Nuketown hater, dude. I don't know why I hate this map so much. I think I just hate Nuketown, to be honest. I am sick and fucking tired of Nuketown. I don't know, chat. Is it a W or L for you guys, chat? I don't know. Like, I would be so fine with never seeing Nuketown again in a Call of Duty game. Like, oh, I really would be. I really would be.
Maybe a little bit controversial to put this high on the list, but I think I'm just really like this map, and it's for sure a lot has to do with my personal taste.
It's a really good starter map. I agree with that, but it just, in terms of like going back to it, there's no high rounds. There's no Easter egg. Like, to me, it's just one of the least replayable maps of all time.
Proclivity to enjoy these kinds of maps. But Nuketown, and I think the charm of why it works in BO2, as opposed to something like Alpha Omega, is they really didn't try to overthink this map. The essence of Nuketown, and I'm talking in multiplayer, is just literally like pure, unadulterated chaos. And that's pretty much what it is in the form of BO2 and zombies as well. The map is hard on BO2. There's no doubt about that. And it also has a system in which perks come into the map in a random fashion. So you can be at round 20 if you get really unlucky without Juggernog the whole time. It's a very good map to practice on. I would say like the fundamentals of just learning zombies. A lot harder to do so than on something like Kino. You gotta be at least somewhat familiar with the game to have a good time on. And I would actually say it's probably better played solo, as 4-player co-op there just isn't enough room for everybody to have a reasonable amount of space in order to be comfortable in Nuketown. But I guess it's kind of the point, is to be perpetually uncomfortable on Nuketown. But I don't know.
Also, the Mark II percentage on this map is just another reason why I hate it.
To overcomplicate itself with any main Easter egg. Although at round 25, the zombies' eyes change from yellow to blue, as the events of Moon canonically in the storyline are taking place at the same time, which is a neat little touch. But just the overall gameplay, it doesn't need to be overcomplicated, and I really think that is fundamentally the charm of this version as compared to Alpha Omega, which I think just overthought Nuketown. I would think about it like this. Town is to Kino Der Toten as Nuketown is to 5, and
let me think about this. Town is to Kino Der Toten that Nuketown is to 5. I mean, quite literally, yeah.
It's basically just the idea that it has the same structure as just a basic survival map, with the bones rearranged a little bit to make the
chat, like, one in the chat if you would like me to do a Nuketown round 50 run. Like, obviously I can't do a round 100 run. It's impossible. But a round 50 could be doable. Could be doable.
Slightly more intense, and the map
the best
slightly
zombies
more
map
difficult.
of all time.
But I'm a really big fan of Nuketown, and I think it's a great experience overall. So coming up next,
how is 100 impossible? There's no infinite damage wonder weapon, so you're shooting the ray gun. The ray gun Mark II. It's a huge L, dude.
Giants on Black Ops 3, and this map plays significantly different from Derice on the, the original build of it, but it also plays very differently to every other Black Ops 3 map, which was a great thing, because when BO3 launched at the time, the only choices you had were Shadows of Evil or the Giants, and a lot of people at the time
I'm gonna say this, chat, the Giants saved BO3's launch. One in the chat if you agree with that. If Black Ops 3 did not have the Giant, I think people would have hated this game, to be fully honest. This map literally saved this game.
Meaning that Shadows of Evil was too complicated, the setup wasn't, they just wanted to jump in and shoot zombies, and that's exactly what the Giant was for. Not only that, but when you look at the map now, this map takes away two of arguably the biggest crutches that BO3 Zombies provides, that being the Zombie Shield and also Widow's Wine. And that may not seem like a whole lot on the surface, and I don't even know if Treyarch intentionally meant it for it to play out like this or not, but it makes the Giant play meaningfully different to every other BO3 map, including Shadows, including things like Der Eisendrache. The Giant is very unique in the fashion that it plays, and I think BO3 would be a lesser game without it. It's one of the most underappreciated maps in the entire game.
So many zombie players would not have been invested into BO3 without this map. And chat, I like Shadows more, but I won't lie, there was a portion of like the first week or so where I probably only played the Giant over Shadows. What do you guys have more game time on, Shadows or the Giant? I've asked this question before, but it's always interesting to see the different answers.
But you can play the Giant very similar to how you played Derice back in the day. You can camp on the catwalk, you can train near Pack-a-Punch, and many of the features that you know and love from that map still exist in here, alongside some new stuff. There's a small little Easter egg to do to get the Annihilator, which is basically the same quest that you did in World at War with the...
Me and my homies fucking hate the Annihilator, chat. I mean... If I could change one thing about BO3 and go back, I would literally delete the Annihilator from existence. It is probably my least favorite weapon on BO3, dude.
You know, find Samantha one. There's an Easter egg to unlock a free perk using monkey bombs and teleporters.
Bro.
Just some little things here and there that make the map feel, you know, verifiably different from original Der Riese and also other BO3 maps. I think the Giant is an amazing map. Next, however, we have Revelations, and while this is pretty high on my list, and I think Revelations, all things considered, is actually a great map. There are a few things in which I don't particularly like about it, and remember my theory I was saying where the DLC 4 map of every Zombies game is practically more or less the blueprints of the next Zombies iteration.
I feel
that
like
was true up until BO4, I would say, but Revelations, in my opinion, is essentially the blueprints of a Black Ops 4 map, and I'll explain why. At least in terms of how the player interacts with it, you essentially have the more fetch questy kind of main Easter egg where Revelations took over 2 weeks to solve, and not only that, but in terms of the wonder weapons and making the player overpowered, kind of like how you have in BO4, you have access to Thunder.
Chat, will there ever be an Easter egg that takes as long as Revelations to solve? Ever again? I'm going to say this. I don't think so. I'm going to be honest. I don't think so.
Apothicon Servant, Shield, Lil Arnie's.
I think Cold War had so... Okay, not to hate any hunters on Cold War, but so many people were so good at finding shit. I feel like people have like really know the patterns now that Treyarch does. So, I mean, I want to be proven wrong. I want to be proven wrong, but honestly, IDK.
Rocks, and not even to mention the God Mask. I could go on, but pretty much this is to say that there's a lot that makes the player quite overpowered in Revelation. So I'm not really saying on its face value is a bad thing, but it does make high rounds really easy in Revelations. I'd say it's probably the easiest map or one of them to get round 100 of all time. The Easter egg itself is interesting, I guess.
Definitely
like the steps are kind of weird. They just involve you gathering a lot of, you know, fetch quest things, very similar to how BO4 functioned. Technically, it has 2 boss fights, I guess, one of them being where you just fight Margwas in 4 sequences, which ironically is actually cooler than the final main boss fight against the Shadow Man, which may be intentional, maybe not, according to Jason. I don't really know.
Kino Der Toten Black Ops.
I mean, it's not intentional. Let's be real, dude. We all thought we would be in a fucking war of apothecons and keepers at the end, which I just... I could go on, man.
I will say it was nice to see a lot of these classic zombie map iterations be remastered for Revelations, but other than that, there isn't a whole lot of like actual new map that was designed. Besides the boss fight arena in Spawn, there are pretty much areas of maps we've already seen before, and again, it might sound like I'm dogging on Revelations quite a lot. There is a lot of flaws to point out, but I really don't hate the map. I think it's actually pretty good. It's just not the strongest in BO3, and the ending, to say the least, was quite weird. So I don't know. Revelations is great, don't get me wrong, but not my favorite. Coming up just after that is what I'm considering to, from this point on, be in our high tier, or true high tier of maps. This is going to be buried on Black Ops 2, which, speaking of Revelations...
I just don't understand how Chaos X Silencer hated this map so much. I just still, to this day, like, nobody can explain that to me. I don't understand how people hate Buried, man. I just don't get it.
In a lot of ways, I would actually say Buried is the Revelations of BO2 in the sense that like, you kind of just play this map with anything and everything. This is the epitome of Jimmy Zielinski having absolutely no structure to his zombies maps and just being a complete, in this case, sometimes a literal sandbox. Like I was saying a bit earlier, it was so smart having both Jason Blundell maps and Jimmy Zielinski maps in the same game, where Jason Blundell's maps are very structured and orderly, Jimmy Zielinski's are very chaotic and unstructured, and you see that no better than in Buried. And something else I noticed, especially with these kinds of maps as opposed to Jason's maps, we know roughly how all the Easter egg steps work. We can explain them pretty much verbatim in Jason's maps,
in the good tier maps,
things like Die Rise specifically,
if we're on
Buried, and Buried,
we're in the good
a lot of the
maps.
Steps and the way that they function are so enigmatic, you can't really pin them down. So doing the main quest in Buried, for example, if you're doing the steps with the maze and the levers on it, a lot of people thought, oh, the way the levers
I want more, I want more wonder weapons like the Paralyzer, where they literally change the whole flow of a map. Like, there's so few wonder weapons that do that, man. It's so interesting. Like, even just a wonder weapon that like could make you double jump or something. It doesn't have to be like a float. Or a grappling hook. Exactly, dude. Dude,
you have to look at the colors of the candy in the shop. It's like complete urban legends and myths that nobody really knows if they're true or not, and that's literally the essence of what Jimmy Zielinski.
A grappling hook would be
the biggest
sick,
criticism
man.
I hear from the community in regards to Buried is the fact that the map is too easy, and I would actually agree with that in the sense that Revelations on BO3 is too easy. They're, you know, basically cut from the same cloth in terms of design, but Buried is at least an incredibly unique setting, and in a game where
Buried high
it's
rounds
juxtaposed
are hard, though,
with
man.
very structured and orderly maps.
It's not
Buried
easy
introduced
for
so many
that.
weird
agree,
concepts
though.
as well, like Leroy or Arthur the Giant, a lot of the witches that, you know, are in the haunted
Buried
house
is
that take
such a
your points, and
unique
even the
experience,
maze
too,
that
though.
randomizes every time you go through to get to Pack-a-Punch. So many just weird and strange ideas that admittedly not all of them landed, and there is a lot about Buried
I
that
think
just
there's
doesn't
a
make
lot
sense,
of
or there's a lot
fun
of
things
wasted
that Buried
space,
did.
or there's just some things that straight up probably don't
I
belong
think
in the
a lot
game,
of things
but
did
that's
land.
okay. It's a lot of the
But-
growing pains of, you know, what zombies
But
had
yeah,
to go through.
that's
But I
why
think Buried holds a
Jim
special
Blundell
place in a lot of
came
people's
after
hearts
this map,
for
though,
many
you know?
reasons, and not only due to the fact
Too
that it
easy
was
equals
Jimmy Zielinski's
38.
final
Yep.
map, but also the
What's your PB on 38, yo? Round 17.
fact
boys.
that, like,
Let's
Buried
go.
just kind of is the epitome of a sandbox full of toys where it's like literally just figure it out. There's no way in which the game tells you this is the best way to play, or it doesn't guide you in any direction. It just gives you the materials and says have fun with it. And there's something kind of charming about that. Again, we haven't really had that in Zombies recently, and who knows if we'll ever see that sort of structure and style again.
I
but
don't
guess
think we will ever
only
get
time
a
will
map
tell.
like
Coming up
Buried
just
again,
after that,
which
we
is so
have
sad.
Ancient Evil on BO4,
Ancient Evil.
which is
Hey,
easily my favorite on the entire game. And
I
it's not
agree.
because
Ancient Evil
it's
or
not because I
9,
particularly
top
like the
2.
Chaos Crew. I just think that the entire gameplay loop of Ancient Evil, the Easter egg, and also the boss fight.
Any Ancient Evil haters in the chat? I'm curious. Does
BO4
anybody
systems were
not
just
like Ancient
fundamentally made for this map, or I guess
I'm wondering
this
why,
map
if
was
you don't
made
like
for
it.
BO4
Because
systems. A
most
lot of
people I
things
talk
like,
to
Blood
like
of the Dead,
this map.
Classified, man, maybe even Dead of the Night, and some of those other experiences, Nacht Der Toten, Alpha Omega, anything else on BO4, it feels like the systems were retrofitted to those maps where it feels like
see, that's what I'm
these
saying. I don't think a
systems
lot of
in which
people hate
BO4
this map.
functions on, like specialists and elixirs,
I
all
don't
that
hate it,
stuff,
but I hate the
was
BO4
made
gameplay.
for
I mean,
this map
true.
in mind. It fits like a glove, and I think that's why the gameplay is so seamless and I enjoy it so much. It's probably the least fetch questy map out of all of the offerings on BO4, which is probably
Chat,
another big...
I'm not gonna lie, if Black Ops 4 launched with 9 Ancient Evil, Dead of the Night, and like Classified, dude, like that's the worst part about the game, is that even if they just switched the orders of the maps that they developed, oh my gosh, it would have been that would have been fire, bro.
Big reason as to why I enjoy it.
Yeah,
That
but
doesn't
then the DLCs would have sucked. Let's just forget about Voyage, dude. Let's just not. I mean, yeah, Voyage as a DLC would have been an absolute disaster.
I mean, it's easy. A lot of the gameplay challenges in Ancient Evil can actually be quite difficult, and I enjoy it for that fact. The boss fight isn't perfect. I think it's got its, it's got its flaws.
I like
you kind
the
of
Ancient
lose
Evil boss
space in the
fight,
boss
though.
fight arena over time,
But I
which doesn't
dislike
really add
losing
much to the
space.
experience for
I
me.
agree.
And
I
I'm not
agree.
really in
It's
love
not
with
a
the mini
fun
boss
mechanic.
enemies of this map either. But as I guess the final
the
Chaos map,
Giganese aren't too
this
bad,
was
though.
a pretty good send off. I know it wasn't supposed to be the last Chaos map, but that's how it ended up being for BO4, and I'm kind of glad we ended on this note because it's a
BO4's
map that I
Nuketown?
actually
Oh,
like.
Alpha
Don't
Omega, we
particularly
talked about
enjoy
that a
9 or
while
Dead
ago.
of the Night all that much, but Ancient Evil, it really gets a pass in my book. It gets a green light for me and is genuinely a very solid zombies experience, even for newer players, I would say. Coming up just above that, whereas Ancient Evil is the best map in BO4, I think
yes,
that Nacht Der
sir.
Toten is Cold
Chop,
War's
you're a
best.
Mauer lover, dude. I respect that. You put it right at the top, dude. Like, I don't think Cold War has any great maps, but Mauer is, like, for me, it's just teetering at it. So, you know what? I agree.
Offering.
I
Now,
agree.
Nacht Der Toten, I actually didn't expect to like all that much before it came out, and we had to wait a long time in between Firebase Z and this map, but it was well worth the wait.
It was
Nacht Der Toten not
well
only
worth
has
the
just
wait.
like
I
a great
agree.
core gameplay loop, its atmosphere is pretty distinct and unique, and it brings
Yeah,
a lot of
I
features
agree.
that we really hadn't seen in Cold War up to this point, especially with the addition of Klaus. It introduced Mule Kick, and also I believe Gersh devices finally made it to the game with this map as well.
Man.
The main Easter egg is probably one of the best in zombies in general, and certainly the best in Cold War. The boss fight is pretty stellar as well. You have to fight Valentina in her like ethereal form, and while it isn't the best,
this is the thing I don't get. Like, this map is a campaign map, but it has so much more cohesion than Forsaken, which is why, I mean, it's so true. Like, how does this map have way more cohesion than Forsaken? You know, and they're both campaign maps. Very interesting.
Best boss fight in Cold War compared to Legion, it's still absolutely excellent. This was the first map in Cold War as well to have its own unique pack-punch camo that wasn't the default where the game launched, and they're very pretty in this map.
Also the pack camo in Mowers is so
decent
iconic.
Amount of offerings for side quests, not as many as Forsaken, obviously, but it's got a pretty fair amount of side Easter eggs to discover or just do them for the first time, whether it be like the bunny Easter egg in which you go to the club or getting the ether tool. There's a bunch of them that really add to the experience of Voyage of Toten. Just a great experience in general, and I don't have that many bad things to say about it. High rounds are pretty fun on it as well, and there isn't really a whole lot to complain about with Voyage, honestly. So coming up just after that, we're actually getting close to the end of our map list here, but this is still a pretty high tier map. Call of the Dead. I
think you are quite literally the only other zombies YouTuber who understands why Call of the Dead is good. I don't understand why there are zombie YouTubers that just don't understand why Call of the Dead is a bad map or why it's a good map. You know, everybody thinks it's bad, dude. I just don't get it, dude. I literally can't understand why people say this is such a bad map. But it's just
favorite map of a lot of people, and I didn't like this for a long time, but as years have gone on, I've started to appreciate the Call of the Dead's design choices a little bit more, and specifically, it really has a distinct flavor.
Dude. Hearts in the chat from my boy Chop. Like, dude, it feels like nobody else on this damn planet understands why Call of the Dead is good, other than chat and everybody. Like, dude, it's such a fire map.
No,
it's like literally such a good co-op map as well, and such a good solo map. It does the dichotomy of both of them just perfectly, bro.
Only in terms of the map aesthetic, the setting and the atmosphere really help, but of course we have to mention the late great George Romero plays a very key role in how this map functions as a boss that pretty much always follows you around whether you take him out or not. The main quest is a pretty interesting idea in which turns the general formula on its head, where now you're not playing as Ultimus, you're just assisting them by essentially gathering items and doing little...
Chat, this is the other thing. The next two streams that I have to do, IW all Easter eggs. We'll do the super Easter egg, but another one is Call the Dead Round 100 modded, but the only mod is that the scavenger does infinite damage. Somebody made a mod like that, and I should download that. I should literally get that set up, and I will literally do that, because just that one tiny modification makes this map infinitely better. You know what I mean?
Objectives for them as you're in the map and trying to make your way through as well. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first time in Zombies history that we played as a crew that wasn't Ultimus, or I guess the first real celebrity cast.
Well,
the map also brought
five, but I mean, Call of the Dead was celebrity.
Two new unique wonder weapons being the Scavenger explosive sniper rifle and also the VR-11, which turns regular zombies into humans and can also calm George down. So it's got a variety of uses, and it's just like, again, weird and creative wonder weapon formulas that BO1 was very identifiable for. If I were to level some criticisms at Call of the Dead, I would say that there should be a mechanic in which you can take George Romero out once and then choose to spawn him in again instead of having him...
You know the way George Romero should work? It should literally work like this. Once you get all the perks on the map, he should just not come back. That would be so good. And if you downed or something and you didn't get any of the perks, or you lose all your perks, then he comes back, dude. Oh, bro, That would literally fix it so hard, bro.
Follow you around the map at all times, even regardless if you take them out. If you do the Easter egg and you grab a death machine, you'll be given a Wonder Waff instead of a typical death machine.
Called it as some of the best
I guess
Easter
a
egg
pretty cool
rewards
permanent perk for doing that sort of thing. The Easter egg can be done solo or co-op, and they have slightly different variations on the steps, although both of them aren't too difficult.
Well, the infinite damage scavenger one-hit George, no, it doesn't work like that because it just doesn't work like that.
They're rather fun. I feel like at the end of the day, Call of the Dead is quite literally just the amalgamation and the concentration of like the essence of BO1 zombies. When I think of Black Ops 1, a lot of times I just think of Call of the Dead. So many other good design choices, great wonder weapons, pretty good layout, all things considered. The first teleporting pack of
Yes, somebody understands. It's just such a good feeling to find a human being of somebody understanding why this map is so good, dude. Like, chat, in my opinion, to this day, there has still not been a zombies map that has nailed a layout like Call of the Dead has, where it's zip lines, it's an adventure. Oh, dude, it's just...
punch machine, and just a lot of uniqueness that Call of the Dead has to offer. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find some people that at least wouldn't rank Call of the Dead as a good map. But now entering our top tier, or the greatest
Talk about
of all
Noah
time
J
maps.
right there.
This first one is going to be Gorod Krovi
put
in
my
Black
homie
Ops 3.
GK and Call of the Dead right next to each other.
The systems in Black Ops 4 fit Ancient Evil like a glove. I would make that exact same argument about BO3 systems and Gorod Krovi. They just flow so immaculately well together, and it's got probably one of the best actual map layouts of all time, as well as a great Easter egg quest and one of the best boss fights in zombies history. Not to mention, the map also reintroduced the PPSH back into the pool of zombies weapons, and the community went absolutely wild for that. And it also introduced a version of the ray gun we had never seen quite like this before, the Mark III, which not only helped this map become more iconic, it really gave it some distinct, unique flavor, but the weapon itself became pretty iconic for zombies in general. The map also, it takes place in war-torn Stalingrad. That's basically the general atmosphere, but it combines an alternate history in some sense with dragons, and it's a little bit more complicated than that with the zombie storyline and everything and why they exist there. But the Easter egg itself involves you basically doing tasks for Sophia, and this is where I think a lot of the beauty comes in. The way that these tasks and Easter egg steps thereafter are designed are completely genius. They're right on the edge of challenging the player's gameplay skills without really being annoying. A lot of the ways in which you obtain wonder weapons in here don't feel punishing if you don't go after them. It doesn't really denigrate your experience.
Like, you know what's the funniest shit? The most annoying part about Gorod Krovi is this right here. Waiting for the dragon cutscenes. Like, that is it. And they literally added a fix to that in the game. You get the wings. Right, that is literally it, though.
But they are very rewarding if you choose to go out of your way and get some of these things. Perfect example is the Dragon Strike controller. Once you take the dragon for the first time to the pack punch machine, you can choose to do a lockdown for 3 sequences, and you're given this Dragon Strike controller, which is pretty much a zombie's airstrike for all intents and purposes. It's not necessary at all if you're just shooting zombies and playing the map. It is necessary for the Easter egg, but other than that, it's completely optional. You can do it if you want, but the game doesn't punish you if you don't. If you make it to the boss fight, you fight both a dragon and also Nikolai in a mech suit, which originally you think is going to assist you, but it turns out you actually have to fight him in the end as well. A really well-structured boss fight. It's got its own like area for it, and it plays out extremely nice. If I had to throw some criticism at Gorod Krovi, I would say that its special rounds, the Valkyrie drones, don't really fit into the map all that well.
I agree. Valkyrie drones suck, but I mean, like, Valkyrie drones are the reason it took me so fucking long to get to round 100. I do agree.
I feel like shoehorned in, but otherwise they're fine additions. I just don't love them. But Gorod Krovi is absolutely A-tier, S-tier map. Next up is Der Rise. This is the World at War version, and I would also say by extension the Black.
Chat, do you guys like Der Rise or the Giant better? It's always so interesting to hear what people say about this. I think I like the Giant better. But I think I like Der Rise better for co-op. It's a really weird thing, but like World at War or Black Ops 1 Der Rise co-op is just
Black Ops 1 version of original Der Rise. We've seen a couple of iterations of this over the years, but these two in particular are absolutely the best. And the reason is, this is one of those situations where good does correlate to fun. I think that Der Rise's layout is literally the blueprints for how I would say 80% of zombie maps are made, where you have a central hub in which either you spawn in or you spend a lot of your time, with a couple of veering off paths to the left and right side. When you think about it now, that's like how 80% of zombies maps are made these days. Not all of them, but most of them, and that pretty much came from Der Rise. You could say Shi No Numa kind of did that first, but Der Rise did it the best and the most distinctly. And not only that, Der Rise brought a few new things to the table, the biggest and most groundbreaking being the Pack-a-Punch machine, which would fundamentally change zombies.
Nice because literally that's all the difference is between World at War, Black Ops 1, and Black Ops 3. It's quite literally just the difficulty. World at War is the hardest, Black Ops 1's kind of in the middle, and then the Giant is the easiest. So you can, it's literally pick your difficulty of Der Rise.
Forever. The Pack-a-Punch machine is more than just about upgrading your weapon to make it stronger. Although that's a big part of it, it really signals a goal and a milestone of progression for the player. One of the best things and best feelings when playing a zombies map is finally getting to or unlocking Pack-a-Punch, and Der Rise made that very straightforward in a show don't tell manner. You go and explore the map, turn on these portals, and you realize that they have a timer. You eventually intuitively link it back to the main frame, and after doing that for all the sections of the map, which by that point you've now explored them all, you are now granted access to Pack-a-Punch. It feels like a good reward for exploring the map. They did that very intentionally. Like I was saying earlier, my theory in which the DLC 4 map is basically the blueprints of the following game, I would say that Der Rise in a lot of ways is the blueprints slash formula for a Black Ops 1 map. And you can kind of see what I mean, where the basic idea is you explore an open map and you're awarded with Pack-a-Punch. That's how a lot of BO1 maps are structured, and Der Rise kind of brought that right to the forefront.
Without Der Rise, Call of the Dead would just not be the same. It's literally, that's what I love about the old COD games, is they are literally quite literally direct upgrades, most of them, which is so true. And I think that kind of stopped maybe in like BO3. I think.
Front for World at War. And it also has, I wouldn't classify it as a main Easter egg, but it has a real visual Easter egg, which is the Samantha hide-and-seek game where you shoot this spot outside of the map, and then you see these glowing things fly into the map, and you find them, and you don't really get that much of a real reward, but it's something that, like, if you know about it, certainly enhances your experience of the map, and they were to bring it back in the Giant, that's what awards you the Annihilator, but it's just something that they were starting to play with a lot of these ideas that really define what zombies is, even to this day in 2022. It all started with Der Rise, in my opinion. Not only is it just a greatly designed map, it's incredibly fun, and I've had some of my most memorable and enjoyable zombies experiences either by myself or with friends on this very map. So getting almost to the very top of our list, another greatest of all time, inarguably, is Mob of the Dead. But what is it exactly that makes Mob of the Dead so good? This is when you...
Like, chat, Der Rise's layout is literally in every single successful zombies map. Like Mob, Der Eisendrache. It's in every single one. That is why, in my opinion, it makes it so good. Like, it's at least an A-tier map, always.
Take basically Jimmy Zielinski's entire method of making maps and do a complete 180. These maps are extraordinarily structured, and that's not even necessarily a bad thing. The gameplay loop is so tightly crafted that you can play the early game and setting up Mob of the Dead in a variety of ways that are all challenging and satisfying. Not only the fact that it takes place in a really unique location on Alcatraz Island.
Because I think the thing that Der Rise really lacks is a story. Like, there's a story, obviously, Der Rise, which is why I like Declassified, because it really brought the story out. But Mob's story is literally in your face. You see it as instantly as soon as you spawn into the map. You see the whole fucking paper of, okay, we got to get the key. You got to get like this, which is why, like, that's the story I like, man, you know? Where Der Rise, the story is more subtle. Mob, it's just right in your fucking face, man.
And based off of real events, that stuff all tremendously helps, but the gameplay itself is super fun. The fun thing with Mob is that there is a lot of structure, but there's so much variation within that structure. There still is number one, like, a correct way to play the game.
Why I
ultimately,
think a lot of
if you do the Easter egg, you're going to end up at the same place no matter what. You know? And it doesn't even have a traditional boss fight. You have to face off co-op against one of your friends, and that's a really unique unique twist on the formula, and we haven't really seen much of that in Zombies either. Mob of the Dead was really ahead of its time in that case. The wonder weapons of the map are all super unique as well. You have the ability to just have the Blunder Gat, you can upgrade it, or you can make it the Acid Gat as well, and they all have pretty different functions. You can even get the Hell's Retriever and upgrade it to the Hell's Redeemer if you choose so. But again, the difference is you're not punished if you don't. It's completely optional, and your experience isn't tempered
other than maybe like the
this map also gets slightly experimental in getting rid of Quick Revive for the first time in any Zombies map for a new mechanic called Afterlife, which essentially in solo gives you 3 quick...
Mob was such a great map for like people who first time playing Zombies. Because it's like, especially if you're solo, the Afterlife system just made it so much more inclusive for them, dude. Like,
revives because the map's difficulty is scaled to match as such. This is one of the harder maps in BO2, at least for a lot of people, and it goes to justify that why they would take Quick Revive out and replace it with Afterlife, which you get a new one each round, but is fundamentally there for opening up and interacting with the map in very interesting ways. If I had to lay some criticisms at Mob of the Dead, which again, it is a great, amazing, fantastic map, however, it's not perfect, my criticisms would come in the form that the main Easter egg itself isn't really that substantive in terms.
Also, I hate the gas canisters. Picking them all up. I just hate it.
Of its steps. Really, just the Easter egg is build the plane for the first time, go on it 3 more times, get the Acid Gat, get the Golden Spork, and then type in codes, and then go to the bridge. That's pretty much it. Obviously, easier said than done, but there isn't a whole lot of steps outside of that stuff. It's pretty, like, minimal in terms of the steps that are required.
I never knew you could fucking mantle that. What the fuck? This is the crazy... What?
They're all pretty fun to do, so I won't be
do you guys know you can mantle that?
As well, who is the mini-boss in Mob of the Dead, is probably also COD Zombies, one of the best mini-bosses that the entire franchise has ever seen. Makes a great debut in Mob of the Dead, and we were going to see him also in Blood of the Dead, but he works extraordinarily well in BO2. It's crazy because Mob of the Dead was also held back by hardware limitations. They wanted to do more with this map, but to be honest, I mean, I guess we'll never know. Weird. I feel like Mob of the Dead was actually made better by the fact that they were limited by their hardware, whereas Transit was made a little bit worse. They completely optimized everything they were given with for Mob of the Dead. There's not an inch of wasted space on this map, and everything is very intentional. It is a beautiful masterpiece of a map, and obviously, I don't think many people would disagree with that. So coming up after that is, if there was ever a perfect Zombies map, if there was ever an ideal Zombies map that doesn't have any flaws, I think the closest you could get to it is Der Eisendrache.
I do agree. Because Origins can be a little complicated, but DE just hits that the perfect blend, dude.
I literally sat here and thought about how I'm going to criticize this map, and I really can't find any holes in this experience. Der Eisendrache is quite literally...
I think GK is better than DE for the blend. I agree with that as well. But I think for casuals, DE is such a good starting map if you don't have BO2, for example.
The perfection of the modern Zombies formula, whereas Der Rise definitely set the precedent. Der Eisendrache is the sheer refinement and perfection of that formula. It follows the same 4 wonder weapon format that we've gotten very used to, but all of the bows have their own unique quests to both obtain and upgrade them, and they all serve their own individual functions.
I'm so glad they buffed the rest of the bows as well. Like, yes, they had to nerf the Stormbow because everyone was using it, but dude, they buffed them. That just shows that they wanted to make this quite literally one of the most perfect maps.
The Easter egg itself has really well thought out and unique steps to do that both include the bows, which was one of my criticisms of Origins, which we'll get to, but the Easter egg quest itself has literally the perfect blend of puzzle steps and gameplay challenges.
It is truly one of the best
introductory experiences. It blends it so seamlessly into both getting and obtaining and upgrading the wonder weapons that you don't even really calculate or notice that you're doing the entire Easter egg, but once you do that, you get to the boss fight, and it's a very straightforward 3-phase shoot the boss kind of damage deal thing. But and I'm not even saying that as a criticism. It's very formulaic, it's straightforward, but it does it very effectively. If I had to criticize DE, that's the only thing I can say, is that it does have a very vanilla and straightforward formula, but it executes
it's also one of the very first boss fights in Zombies, which is why they were still trying to find their footing with it. So, I mean, it makes sense.
Der Eisendrache was also probably a best-case scenario for Black Ops 3 when it released, because starting out the DLC season with this much of a banger for a map, then...
Dude, chat, the trailers for DE also... Treyarch fucking killed it, man. Seeing that at Treyarch as well with the Z House, woo! They killed it, dude. I love that. Still one of my favorite Zombies experiences of all time, dude.
Pretty much setting yourself up for, you know, a good year to come.
Yeah,
and
the hype was
absolutely set the tone for the rest of the season. Easily one of the best Zombies maps of all time, if not the best to a lot of people. But for me, it's not the #1. So let's talk about Origins. This is the next map coming up just after DE, and I think that this map is best.
I mean, chat, I have not fundamentally disagreed, I don't think, with anything on this list. Other than, like, it's one of those things where it's like it can be a tier up or a tier below, but I think everything has been ranked very well, chat. What are you guys' opinions out of 10 on Chop's tier list? I'm curious to hear what you guys say.
Played on BO2, and that's the way that it was originally intended to be experienced.
The only thing about this that got me was how
Eisendrache is basically
I mean, I understand it in the way that he ranked it. If Chop didn't mention the nostalgia point right at the beginning, then I would be confused, but I understand it, you know?
Format, but perfected. This took more risks, and I would say the risks paid off more in Origins, but that means Origins came with a few more errors and flaws inherently designed into the map.
Chat, like, this is the thing that I don't think people understand a lot. The map before Origins was buried. Like, in my opinion, buried is like over here. They're like quite literally the most polar opposite maps ever. Like, buried was the map before this, right? That's why, like, when you get Origins, you're just like, after buried, you're like, what is this, dude? You know, like, they're both really good, but they're quite literally on the polar opposite ends, which is why Origins, I think, had such a great effect on a lot of people.
And I'll explain what I mean. So obviously Origins was the first map to really introduce the formula of having 4 wonder weapons or 4 upgradable unique wonder weapons for your zombies map. And DE obviously sort of copy pasted that into their format as well. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but Origins did come up with this idea first. And all things considered, I think most people, myself included, still prefer the staves to the bows. Like, the bows are fine and everything, but the staves are...
I do agree with that. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely so iconic.
Chat, staves or bows?
I think these staves function better from a gameplay perspective, and also the way you upgrade them, I just think is maybe a little bit better than how Eisendrache does them, although they're very close. The problem with Origins is that the Easter egg itself, the main quest, is basically just getting and upgrading the staves. There's not really many steps outside.
That is a good complaint though about Origins, and every single speedrun is quite literally you're upgrading the staffs. That's the Easter egg
of that process. Whereas with DE, you upgrade the bows and you use, if you're playing solo, just one bow to assist you in doing more steps. Where it's like, if you upgrade the staffs in Origins, you've done about 90% of the Easter egg already, which kind of makes it feel flat a little bit, but the entire process of getting and upgrading them is the bulk of the quest. And, you know, it's fundamentally designed for 4 players. If you're playing Origins solo, you still have to do all 4 staffs, whereas DE, you only...
It's also funny, right? Because you do say Origins is fundamentally designed for 4 players, but solo speedrunners just said, fuck that. You know?
They have to do one bow. They wanted to mitigate this problem.
And I think on Treyarch's part, it was a
Kino Der
total
Toten
fluke that it ended up being perfect for solo players, because solo players got lucky with the glitches on BO2.
Of issues with RNG and getting the right robots on Origins, which could be an entire discussion on its own. The layout in terms of how you get around the map isn't perfect in Origins, and in fact, I think stamina up is absolutely required, and I think the zombie shield was pretty much made specifically for this map. Like, I know it's not the first time it appeared, but in terms of running away from zombies in the mud and being slightly slowed down so they might hit you in the back, this is quite literally what the shield was made for. And in this sense, I think the shield is superior to having armor, but in modern zombies, I think the armor system's actually better. That aside, I was...
Chat, armor or shield? I mean, I agree with Chop. It's definitely dependent on map and game, but yeah, part of me thinks that for the next standalone game that they release, I don't think they're going to be bringing back armor. Armor is 360 shield. I mean, true. Shield with the carpenter mechanic, see, I think I agree with that the most. Because armor is better, but shield is more... Like, dude, when you clutch save with the shield, it's so much more satisfying to watch, in my opinion, than just armor, you know? So, I think that's what makes shields cool. Because it's like when you pull it out last second, it's your last resort. That's what makes it sick, you know?
Thinking about Origins, and you guys can tell me if this is maybe thinking too deep into it, but I was thinking about how Origins is pretty much like a representation of what Zombies is. So, for example, the upper portions of Origins is obviously the battlefields of World War I. It's dark, it's gray, it's dreary, it's monotonous, and it represents like the, I guess, fundamental surface structure of Zombies gameplay. Just surviving, rebuilding barriers, and shooting zombies. But then you have the Undercroft. You have this like really mystical and magical place that kind of represents the hidden layer under some zombies maps, right? It almost represents Easter eggs themselves, like diving a little bit deeper into the game to discover something absolutely mind-blowing. And I feel like that's what the two layers of Origins, in a sense, kind of visually represent. Maybe I'm looking way too far into it, but that's always how I thought about it. Basically, just the monotonous surface level gameplay itself of zombies, but you have this hidden layer of more interesting detail and depth hidden underneath. I don't know. You guys can let me know if you think I'm making too much out of that, but that's what I feel like helps make Origins special, whether we...
So chat, is Shadows going to be his best map? I think it is. I respect that, Chop, but let's see.
Consciously think about it like that or not. And you would be really hard-pressed to find somebody who says they genuinely don't like Origins and have some actual reasons for doing so, not just to be a contrarian. The map is widely beloved by the entire Zombies community as one of the best, if not the best map of all time. But in my opinion, it still falls short to one map in particular. And ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, this...
Chop, I have to say, I think you've got to be the only Zombies YouTuber I know that's put Shadows at the #1 spot, and I think that's very respectable. Chat, is there any other Zombies YouTuber you know that's put Shadows #1? I don't know, dude.
This is going to be the best Zombies map of all time.
I think what makes Shadows one of the best Zombies map of all time as well is because how people thought it just wasn't a good map as well on launch. You know? It was literally one that really grew on the community. And I think that is what made it so good. Chrism, yeah, I do agree. Ben thinks it's the best? Oh, I think you're right as well.
This has to be the king, the absolute beauty of the pack, Shadows of Evil in Black Ops 3.
I love Shadows,
I remember quite vividly, myself a little bit
Shadows
included.
just, I love more and more.
But a lot of the community didn't take too well to Shadows of Evil when it came out. And I like to use the analogy that, like, a lot of people say, oh, Shadows of Evil aged really well. I don't think it's that exactly, although maybe it's part of it.
I think the community aged well with Shadows. That's what I think.
I think that we aged into Shadows of Evil.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Zombies players, we weren't really ready for this kind of map. But as we got more familiar with not only the mechanics of Black Ops 3 and the maps that were to come subsequently after, and just getting more familiar with it in general, we came to really appreciate what this map actual intent was. And I think Pat said it best when he said, Shadows of Evil is essentially Treyarch's Mona Lisa. You can tell at every level of detail, from the gameplay to the way the structure is set up. I think that Mob of the Dead structure is like...
Chat, if the world decided to make me a bajillionaire, I would just make quality maps like Shadows all the time. I'd put my whole dick into these maps, bro. Like, oh, it'd be so good.
Like the Mob of the Dead format, but perfected.
I would literally try so hard to fucking make these maps like Shadows, because Shadows is just... It's a whole other level.
It's that same really tight gameplay loop when setting up your
main. I'm horny for Shadows
game,
people,
but
bro.
So much variation and freedom opens up to you after you've done that. And there's a variety of ways you can go about setting up. It's absolutely beautiful. You can tell, again, at every level of analysis, how much care and time was put in.
Like, chat, Shadows of Evil, in my opinion, is what Jimmy Zielinski wanted to do with Transit. To be honest,
the best zombies map of all time.
I actually think that Shadows of Evil literally nails what Transit should have been. Right? You know? I really think that Shadows of Evil was almost like Jason Bedell's way of being like, so this is how you make Transit.
Into every inch of Shadows of Evil. Not an inch of wasted space on this map, and in fact, if you look hard enough, every time you play Shadows of Evil, you'll find something new that you didn't notice in the map every time you load it up. And I've been saying that for years. I didn't even really... Wake up! Something different.
Can I get a what?
I was literally about to go to sleep and go to bed, and I'm actually so fucking terrified. Oh my god, dude. Please turn that down. I mean, that woke me the fuck up, bro. Thank you, Bobby, dude. You're a legend. Can I get a what chat? 2 whats in the chat. You are commanded by force of law to put it in the damn chat. But thank you, Bobby, dude. Chat, I broke my glasses, my other one. And there is a homie named Bobby fixing them. So you know what, Bobby? That's an extra shout out to you right there, bro.
Every time I play it, and that is the mark of a truly well-designed zombies map. Yeah. The Easter egg steps are also very good, where in terms of getting the wonder weapons and some of the specialists, like, they're completely optional. Again, the game doesn't punish you for not doing it, but if you choose to keep going further and further, eventually you're going to discover how to do the main quest, and you can do up to the Shadow Man boss fight solo, which I will say, if any criticism of Shadows of Evil, the boss fight isn't great, but it's honestly not that bad, and the ending step can be only...
I think what makes Shadows' boss fight worse is honestly Revelations, to be honest. Because I remember at the time, before Revelations came out, people were totally fine with Shadows' ending and all that. I think the only step people had a complaint with was that it was 4 players only to do the full Easter egg, which... I mean, yeah, it would be nice if you could do it solo. It's not even that big of a deal to make it solo. Just make the panels light up forever once you shoot them, you know? So, I mean, yeah, that I think is just a Treyarch problem. But seriously, still one of the greatest maps of all time, if not the best.
Only done with a couple of players. You have to do it co-op, but that's how to get the cutscene.
And it's an on-disc map as well, which is wild. It's wild, dude. Wild that an on-disc map is the best map that you can play. Actually wild.
Those 2 parts of the quest of Shadows of Evil really help carry this home. The map has such an intriguing backstory and history. I'm not even talking about the literal story of the map. I'm talking about how the map was developed.
Chat, there's been also no other zombies map that has had trailers like Shadows of Evil, where it's down to like the specific characters that had these insanely amazing CGI cutscenes and trailers and all that. Like, just... on a whole other level, this map. On a whole other level.
Developed. For example, there was going to be a 5th district in Shadows of Evil that was cut. We may never know much about that at all. We don't really understand why the ability to upgrade the Apothecary Servant was cut, but it led to a lot of theorizing and theory crafting about Shadows of Evil. All this stuff really added to the
Chat, do you want to hear a theory? My theory about why it was cut? I think when Shadows dropped before DE, I think that it was supposed to be in the game, and then that's when they had the idea for BO4. One in the chat, if you understand me. I think, so what I mean by that is, I think when Shadows first came out, Revelations was obviously supposed to be the Great War map. And I think the reason why they cut it out and they tried to save the Mar Stagua to be upgraded for Revelations is because that was when they realized that they need to make BO4 and essentially lengthen out the Great War map. And then unfortunately, when they wanted to do that with BO4, they fucked themselves, and then the Great War map never came out. Which is why I think they made it so that the Pack-a-Punch could not be upgraded for the Mar Stagua here. Which, it's a really far out, convoluted thing to say, but I think that's the truth, to be honest. And it's wild because, yeah, it started in Shadows because Shadows was also the other map, or the map that had the blueprint for Black Ops 3, where it basically was like, okay, we're going to go and save Dempsey, Takio, then Nikolai, and then have a final map as well. So, dude, that is fucking crazy, man.
Mystique and just the originality of this map. It isn't flawless like I would almost argue DE is. Shadows of Evil has a few flaws, for sure, but a lot of the things, everything that it does right...
Honestly, nah. Because, like, dude, if they didn't want to make it more OP, they wouldn't have released all chemical on launch, in my opinion, with the Mar Stagua. Because that's what makes it so dumb OP, you know? But, like, yeah... I think that's the reason why it's not upgradable on this map. In an ideal world where Black Ops 4 is just chaos and BO3 Revelations was the Great War map, I think Shadows of Evil's Mar Stagua still would have been upgradable, in my opinion.
it completely excels and blows every other Zombies map out of the water on. So a lot of ways, it just drowns out its own errors. And if I had to play one Zombies map for the rest of my life, I would pick Shadows of Evil. There's so many different ways you can play it, and so much you can get out of it every time you load up the map. It is an absolute masterpiece, and I don't say that lightly. But yeah, that is going to be my maps ranked in Call of Duty Zombies from worst to best. This will probably be my list for years to come.
I think this is a solid list in terms of just gameplay. Like, if you're just talking about solely gameplay, I think this is probably like the best pick, because my pick was gameplay. My picks were gameplay and nostalgia, and obviously my own preference. But I think in terms of raw gameplay, this is very good. Like, very, very good.
Till the next Treyarch game comes out, and then we can probably do an updated one. But this is probably the longest video I've ever made on my channel, so if you made it this far, you are a literal living legend.
Chat, boys. If you made it this far,
seriously,
you're a literal legend, boys. Let's go, boys.
This is well over an hour at this point.
Hell yes, brothers.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to let me know in the comments. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're brand new. And I also do stream over on Twitch. If you want to come hang out and follow me, that would be